I'll let this slide just this once. What is he even talking about? He seems so clueless. Maybe it's time to bring him back to reality. My name's Olivia, I'm 32 years old, and I've been married to my husband, Mason, for a year now. We met at a casual party a friend hosted. We hit it off, started dating like most couples, and eventually got married. We weren't getting any younger, after all. Mason isn't the most exciting guy, but he brings a sense of peace to my life. I thought we'd be together until we were old and gray. We both work, so money isn't a problem. When we got married, I didn't overthink it. I handle most of the housework since we're both busy with our jobs. Mason doesn't help much. He either lounges around or leaves early, spending little time at home. Still, I didn't see it as a burden. My parents lived the same way, so I assumed this was just how life as a wife would be. I work a 9-to-5 job and don't have many hobbies. Mason and I weren't big talkers from the start. We respected each other's space, and it never seemed like a problem. Life just went on. One night, Mason came home late. Probably out drinking with coworkers or friends, I didn't know. "You're home late," I said as I welcomed him. "Long night?" "There's dinner if you want, but I guess it's too late for you to eat." He didn't respond. He just turned away and walked into the living room, ignoring me completely. I sighed. Here we go again. Whenever Mason's in a bad mood, he shuts down. I assumed something at work or during his night out upset him. I knew better than to push him when he was like this. I shrugged it off and went to bed, thinking he'd be back to his usual self in the morning. It wasn't the first time, so I didn't dwell on it. The next morning, I was preparing breakfast when Mason walked into the kitchen. "Good morning," I said cheerfully. He gave me a glance, grabbed some milk from the fridge, and left without saying a word. That wasn't like him. He's usually not this cold. At first, I thought he just needed more time to shake off whatever had upset him. So, I didn't press him. I continued making our lunch boxes and carried on with my day. But things didn't go back to normal. Mason stayed distant that night, and the next day too. At this point, I was starting to get worried. I was genuinely worried. Days turned into weeks, and Mason still wouldn't talk to me. I tried messaging him on WhatsApp and even left him little notes, but he ignored them all. The only sign that he acknowledged anything was when he ate the meals I prepared. His lunchbox would always come back empty. I thought maybe slipping a note into his lunch bag might get a reaction. Surely, he'd respond if he found a kind message while eating the food I made with love. But even that didn't work. Mason stayed silent. Before I knew it, over a month had passed in this strange, suffocating silence. I felt helpless. I had tried everything, but nothing seemed to reach him. One evening, I decided to do something drastic. I didn't make dinner. Usually, I'd prepare a meal every night without fail, but this time, I wanted to see how Mason would react if it wasn't there. When Mason got home, I was pretending to watch TV in the living room. He walked in, looked at the empty table where dinner was always waiting, and then glanced at me. I held my breath, expecting him to say something, anything. But he didn't. Instead, he turned around, walked out of the living room, and slammed the front door shut behind him. I was stunned. Why was I being treated like this? What had I done to deserve this silence? I sat there on the couch, feeling completely lost. The next morning, Mason was already gone when I woke up. Curious, I went to the living room and saw a note on the table. My heart raced as I read the words, written in messy handwriting. "Stop skipping out on your wifely duties." Something inside me snapped. That was it. I'd had enough. Why did everything have to be about pleasing Mason? Was this what the rest of my life would look like? We were never an overly affectionate couple, but this treatment was unacceptable. Mason hadn't given me any reason for his behavior, and I had no way to even bring it up. The past month of silence had been unbearable. I grabbed a pen and wrote a response on his note. "I'm going back to my parents' house." Then I packed my things, left the house, and went to my parents. They were surprised to see me suddenly, but when I explained how Mason had ignored me for over a month without any explanation, they understood and welcomed me back warmly. It felt so good to be in a place where I could have a normal conversation again. For now, I was finally at peace. I decided to stay at my parents' house and see how Mason would react before figuring out my next steps. The day I left, I didn't hear a word from him. Knowing Mason, he probably thought I was just trying to prove a point and would eventually give in. Fine, I thought, let's see how long this game lasts. Days turned into weeks, and Mason still didn't reach out, not a call, not a message, nothing. He didn't even bother visiting my parents' house. Before I knew it, 6 months had passed, and Mason was barely even on my mind anymore. Then, one day, as I was leaving the house to go shopping, I saw him. Mason was standing there with an angry, defiant expression. I froze, shocked to see him after all this time. He just stared at me, saying nothing. Was he really still playing this silent game? It was almost laughable. But then he suddenly tried to walk straight into my parents' house without a word. "Whoa, hold on there," I said, blocking his way. Mason looked at me, his face twisted with anger and disbelief, but still silent. I warned him, "Don't just walk in, or I'll call the police." Finally, after more than 6 months, Mason spoke. A smug smile crept across his face as he said, "Look at you, acting all high and mighty just because you're at your parents' house. Since when do you get to talk to me like that?" I remembered Mason being a bit rough at times, but not like this. His tone was completely condescending. As I stood there, lost in thought, he suddenly erupted, "What the hell are you thinking? You've been gone for half a year, just lazing around here while I've been stuck by myself. Get a grip." He spread his arms out dramatically, as if to say, "I can't believe this." Then, in the same arrogant tone, he added, "Look, I'll give you a break this time, okay? Just come home. I'm willing to turn a blind eye to this." His words were so dismissive, so insulting. I couldn't stay calm anymore. "I think you're confused," I said firmly. "You and I are strangers now." Mason's face went blank for a moment, then turned bright red with rage. He started yelling again. "What the hell are you saying? Have you lost your mind? We're married, aren't we? Stop messing around." His outburst left me speechless for a moment, but he didn't stop. "I'm saying I'll forgive you this time," he yelled. "So stop fooling around and pack your bags." Hearing those words made my blood boil. He was acting like he was doing me a favor, like I'd done something wrong. The sheer arrogance of it made me angrier than I'd ever been. It was clear Mason had no idea what had really happened during the past 6 months, or how much I'd changed. I'd finally had enough. Mason was still yelling at me when I snapped. "I already got divorce papers from your mother, signed them, and filed them with the court. So we're not married anymore. Got it? We're strangers. Total strangers. Understand?" I emphasized the word strangers, and Mason's face went pale. He looked genuinely shocked. Here's what had happened. About a month after I moved back to my parents' house, Mason's mother, Helen, called me and asked to meet at a cafe nearby. We were never close, so this surprised me. After some polite small talk, she handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked, tilting my head. "Open it, and even you'll understand," she replied coldly. I opened the envelope and pulled out a divorce petition. It was already signed and stamped by Mason. Confused, I looked at her. Helen's glare reminded me so much of Mason's, full of disdain. "So, is this Mason's doing? Did he say anything about this to you?" I asked, trying to stay calm. Helen sighed dramatically and said, "Oh, he had plenty to say." "Would you like to hear it?" "Yes, please," I said with a polite smile. Helen then launched into a rant. According to her, Mason had been complaining about me for a while. He told her I was a lazy, useless wife who stopped doing housework after we got married. He claimed I quit my job, lazed around all day, and ran back to my parents' house whenever things didn't go my way, like a spoiled child. Helen's piercing gaze never left mine. It was obvious she believed every word of Mason's lies. When she finished, she asked with feigned innocence, "So, what are you going to do? Not that I want to meddle, but you're being pretty awful, you know." By the time I left that cafe, my decision was clear. I smiled at Helen and replied, if he wants a divorce, that's what he'll get. Helen glared at me one last time, threw some money on the table to cover her share, and walked out. I went straight home, signed the divorce papers, and submitted them to the court the very next day. As I finished explaining all of this, Mason's face turned even paler. It seemed he had no idea Helen had followed through on filing the papers. But honestly, I didn't care. I trusted Helen to pass along the signed papers, and Mason clearly had the same idea in mind, he just hadn't expected me to act so quickly. Suddenly, Mason blurted out in a panic, "No. You've got it all wrong. I only filled out those divorce papers to keep my mom off my back. I never intended to file them. They're invalid." He started rambling, making no sense. Then he said, "Besides, you'll be the one who suffers if we get divorced. Let's go to the court right now and have them withdrawn." His words were desperate, but I wasn't about to let him drag me back. I gave Mason a cold, hard stare. Then I tilted my head and asked, "Why would divorce be a problem for me?" Mason suddenly grinned, acting like he had the upper hand. "Think about your age. At your age, with a divorce on your record, no one will want you. That's why I'm saying I'll take you back. This is for your benefit. You should be happy." I couldn't help but roll my eyes at his arrogance. "Listen, Mason. Divorce doesn't just get erased. And for the record, I'm already married to someone else." Mason's jaw dropped. "What? Really? Do you want me to repeat myself?" "I'm married to someone else." Mason looked stunned for a moment, then started ranting. "That's a lie. You're just making that up to get rid of me. You think I'll fall for that?" Before I could respond, someone walked up behind me. It was Noah, my husband. He stepped out of my parents' house, looking confused. Mason froze, staring at the stranger in shock. Noah glanced at me and asked, "Is something wrong?" Feeling awkward, I smiled and introduced them. "Mason, this is my husband, Noah." Noah nodded at Mason, looking slightly skeptical. Mason took a step back, clearly overwhelmed. Noah was a former rugby player, and his strong, imposing presence made Mason visibly nervous. Mason quickly started making excuses. No, you've got it all wrong. My old boss told me to do this. He said to put you in your place, and I listened to him. But hey, he got dumped by his own wife and kids, so what does he know, right? I never wanted any of this." I stared at Mason, disgusted. His excuses were pathetic. Then Noah spoke up firmly. "I think it's time for you to leave. If you come near Olivia again, I'll call the police." With that, Noah stepped forward and ushered Mason out of the doorway. Mason, intimidated, stumbled away and left. For a while, Noah and I stayed cautious, worried Mason might hold a grudge. But as days turned into weeks, we never heard from him again. Curious, I later reached out to a mutual friend to ask about Mason. They filled me in. Apparently, Mason quit his job shortly after showing up at my parents' house. He had always supported his boss, who was known for harassing employees. When the company forced the boss to step down and transfer to a remote location, Mason was expected to follow. But out of pride, Mason quit instead. Now, he's jobless and struggling. His arrogance makes it hard for him to find work. He refuses interviews even when recruiters reach out. To make matters worse, his mother, Helen, disowned him after learning about his behavior. Our friend sighed. He spends his days drinking and blaming his old manager for everything. Honestly, if he keeps this up, he'll ruin his health before he finds another job. I doubt he'll find another spouse either. We both chuckled at Mason's downfall, then hung up. As for me, my life with Noah has been wonderful. Interestingly, Noah and I were co-workers, and he pursued me after hearing about my divorce. Though I was hesitant to date so soon, his kind and competent nature won me over. We married 6 months later. Noah later admitted that he had always had a crush on me and was heartbroken when I married Mason. I laughed and apologized for not noticing his feelings earlier. Now, Noah helps me around the house, something Mason never did. He always compliments my cooking with a warm smile, and these little things bring me so much joy. I never realized how numb I had become to Mason's indifference. With Noah, I'm living a happy, sparkling life. I'm certain we'll share this joy through our golden years.
The notification on my cousin's phone caught my eye from across the room. Historic win, law firm secures $50 million settlement in consumer protection case. My heart skipped as I watched her scroll past it without a second glance. If only they knew. I'm Danielle, and I've spent my entire life being the family's afterthought. Even now, standing in my parents' lavishly decorated living room during our annual family reunion, I can hear my father's booming voice drowning out all others as he brags about my brother. Elias just closed another major deal. Dad's chest puffed with pride. That's my boy, always reaching higher, following in my footsteps, just like I knew he would. I took a long sip of wine, letting the bitter liquid match my mood. The crystal glass caught the afternoon light, creating tiny rainbows on the hardwood floor, more attention than I usually got at these gatherings. Danielle, honey, Laura, my brother's wife, sidled up to me with her perfectly practiced smile. Still doing that little lawyer thing? Still doing that little lawyer thing, I echoed, forcing a smile. My fingers tightened around the stem of my wine glass. Oh, that's nice, she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. You know, Elias's company just had its best quarter ever. He's thinking of expanding internationally. Before I could respond, my father's voice cut through again. Everyone, gather round. Elias has an announcement. The family dutifully circled around my brother like moths to a flame. I hung back, watching my mother Sophia's eyes find mine from across the room. She gave me a small, apologetic smile before turning her attention to her golden child. We've just secured a partnership that will revolutionize our market position, Elias announced, his arm around Laura's waist. The timing couldn't be better, really. Some recent industry changes have actually worked in our favor. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing. Those industry changes were directly related to my lawsuit, but of course, he had no idea. That's my son, Dad clapped Elias on the back. Always making the right moves. You know, when he was just 10 years old? I slipped away to the kitchen, needing a moment to breathe. Lisa, my best friend and fellow lawyer who I'd dragged along for moral support, followed me. You okay? She whispered, leaning against the granite countertop. Just peachy, I muttered, refilling my glass. Love watching my brother take credit for my work without even knowing it. You could tell them, you know, right now. Watch their faces when they realize, not yet, I cut her off. The timing needs to be perfect. The kitchen door swung open, and my mother entered, looking tired. Danielle, sweetheart, your father's asking where you went. He wants everyone together for photos. Of course he does, I said, straightening my blazer. Heaven forbid we miss documenting another moment of Elias's triumph. Danny, Mom started, but I was already moving past her. Back in the living room, Alvin, Laura's brother, and Elias's business partner was checking his phone. His eyes widened slightly, and he looked up, catching my gaze. For a moment, I wondered if he'd seen the news too. Everyone squeeze in, Dad called out, gesturing with his hands. Elias and Laura in the center, of course. Danielle, you can stand on the end there. As the family arranged themselves, I took my assigned spot on the periphery. The photographer, yes, my father had hired a professional photographer for this impromptu family gathering, adjusted his camera. Maybe we should get one of just Elias's immediate family, Dad suggested, and something in me snapped. Actually, I said, my voice carrying across the room, I think I'll skip the photos. I have some work to review for tomorrow. Oh, come now, Dad frowned. Surely your little cases can wait. I saw Lisa tense from her spot near the window, knowing exactly which little case I'd just won. $50 million worth of little. You're right, Dad, I said sweetly, taking my place back at the edge of the group. Some things are more important than work. The camera clicked, capturing our smiles, some genuine, some forced. As we dispersed, I caught another glimpse of my cousin's phone, still open to the news article about my victory. Soon enough, they'd all know. But for now, I'd let them have their moment in the sun. After all, the best revenge is served cold, and mine was just about perfectly chilled. Look what Elias made in art class today. Mom's voice echoed from 20 years ago as I stood in my old bedroom, now converted into Dad's memorabilia room. The walls were plastered with Elias's achievements, academic awards, business magazine features, and that damned macaroni art piece that somehow still held a place of honor. I'd escaped upstairs during the reunion, needing a break from the constant reminder of my second-place status. Lisa followed, as always my faithful shadow. "Is that you?" she asked, pointing to a dusty family photo tucked in the corner. I was 12, wearing braces and a forced smile, while Elias stood front and center with his debate team trophy. "Yeah," I said, picking up the frame. This was right after I won first place in the state science fair. Dad didn't come. He was at Elias's debate competition. "Your volcano must have been impressive," Lisa smiled. "It wasn't a volcano. I developed a preliminary model for water purification in developing countries." I set the photo down harder than necessary. Not that anyone noticed. A creak in the floorboards announced my mother's arrival. "I thought I might find you up here," she said softly. "Your father's showing everyone Elias's old Harvard acceptance letter again." "Of course he is," I muttered. "Did he bring out my Columbia Law acceptance? Oh, wait, that one's probably in the trash where he put it." "Danielle," Mom sighed. "You know he's proud of you too, in his way." "Really? When was the last time he mentioned my achievements to anyone? When was the last time he even asked about my cases?" Before Mom could answer, voices drifted up from below. "Harrison, tell them about how Elias secured that merger in his first year." Laura's voice carried through the floor. "Now that's a story." Dad's booming response followed. "My boy showed them all how it's done. Natural business sense, just like his old man. Not like—" He caught himself, but we all knew what he was going to say. "Not like Danielle." "I should go check on the appetizers," Mom said quietly, retreating from the uncomfortable moment. Lisa touched my arm. "You okay?" "You know what's funny?" I said, moving to the window. "When I was 14, I told Dad I wanted to be a lawyer. He laughed and said I should consider something more suitable, like teaching or nursing." "What changed his mind?" "He didn't. I changed my own mind about needing his approval." The door opened again, this time revealing Elias. "Hey, sis, hiding up here?" "Just reminiscing." I gestured to the shrine that was once my room. "Remember when we used to play office up here?" he asked, picking up one of his old trophies. "You always wanted to be the boss." "Yeah, and you always told me girls couldn't be bosses." "Kids say stupid things," he shrugged. "But look at us now, both successful in our own ways." "Our own ways," I repeated, "some more celebrated than others." "Come on, Danny, don't be like that. You know Dad's just Dad." A commotion downstairs interrupted us. Alvin's voice carried up, excited. "Harrison, you won't believe these quarterly projections. The regulatory changes from that class action suit have opened up entirely new markets for us." My stomach tightened. Lisa shot me a knowing look. "That's my boy," Dad's voice boomed again. "Always positioning himself to take advantage of opportunities." Elias beamed. "Duty calls. Coming down?" "In a minute." After he left, Lisa turned to me. "How long are you going to let them take credit for your work?" "Until the moment is right," I said, straightening my shoulders. "Let them enjoy their celebration. Soon they'll know exactly who made those regulatory changes happen." We headed downstairs, where Alvin was showing Dad some figures on his tablet. "These numbers are incredible, Ba," Dad gushed. "Elias, my son, you've outdone yourself." "Actually," Laura chimed in, "my sources say it was some hotshot lawyer who pushed through those changes. Someone from Morris and Stanley." She looked right at me. Isn't that your firm, Danielle? Is it? I smiled innocently. I hadn't noticed. The room felt suddenly warmer as Alvin's eyes narrowed slightly. He was starting to put the pieces together, but wasn't quite there yet. Well, Dad waved his hand dismissively. Whoever it was, they helped my boy's company flourish. That's what matters. I caught Lisa stifling a laugh behind her wine glass. The irony was almost too perfect. To success! Dad raised his glass, looking proudly at Elias. To success, I echoed, thinking of the case files sitting in my office, my signature on the final settlement that had changed everything. However it comes. 3 years of my life, I whispered to Lisa as we stood on the back patio, away from the family chaos. 3 years of sleepless nights, missed holidays, and endless depositions. And they're in there celebrating like Elias orchestrated the whole thing. The memory of that final day in court was still fresh. The judge's gavel coming down, the victorious nods from my colleagues, the tears in our clients' eyes. I'd fought tooth and nail against one of the biggest corporations in the country and won. Remember when you first got the case? Lisa asked, pulling me from my thoughts. You were terrified. Objection, counselor, I smirked. I was appropriately cautious. You were hiding under your desk when I found you. It was a strategic retreat. The sliding door opened, and Sophia, my journalist friend, stepped out. There you are. I've been looking everywhere for you. Hiding from my family's overwhelming pride in my achievements, I deadpanned. About that? Sophia lowered her voice, glancing over her shoulder. I've been doing some digging into the ripple effects of your lawsuit. You're not going to believe what I found. Before she could continue, Laura's voice cut through the air. Danielle, your father's asking for you. Something about wanting to hear about your, what did he call it? Your little court thing? I shared a knowing look with Lisa. My little court thing. Right. Back inside, Dad was holding court in the living room, Elias at his right hand as usual. Ah, there she is. Tell us about your latest case, sweetheart. Something about consumer protection? Actually, I started, but Elias interrupted. Dad, you should see these numbers Alvin just showed me. The market shift from those new regulations has been incredible for us. The regulations that came from I tried again. Your brother's always had perfect timing, Dad beamed. Remember when he sold his first company right before the market crashed? I caught Mom's eye across the room. She gave me that same apologetic look she'd been giving me for 34 years. I remember, I said quietly. It was the same week I made partner. Oh, was it? Dad looked genuinely surprised. Must have slipped my mind. Lisa stepped forward, her lawyer mode activated. Actually, Harrison, Danielle just won a landmark case that... Lisa, I touched her arm. Not now. Alvin was staring at his phone again, brow furrowed. He looked up at me, then back at his screen. Interesting timing, he muttered. What's that? Elias asked. Nothing, Alvin said quickly. Just reading about some legal news. My phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. Need to talk to you now. Your lawsuit. It's directly connected to Elias's company's sudden windfall. I excused myself to the kitchen, where Sophia was waiting. The regulatory changes your lawsuit forced, she whispered urgently. They didn't just hurt the company you were fighting, they created a massive opportunity for smaller firms in the same sector. Let me guess. Firms like my brother's? Exactly. Your victory basically handed him a golden ticket. I leaned against the counter, letting out a laugh that was half bitter, half amused. So I'm responsible for his latest success, and he doesn't even know it. Danielle, Mom called from the dining room. We're about to cut the cake. Coming, I called back, then turned to Sophia. Not a word about this, not yet. Back in the dining room, Elias was standing at the head of the table, champagne glass in hand. I want to thank everyone for being here today. This past quarter has been incredible for us, and it's all thanks to... Your sister, Alvin cut in suddenly. All heads turned toward him. My heart stopped. What? Elias asked. I mean, Alvin backtracked smoothly. Family support is everything, right? Even the little contributions matter. I could feel Lisa's tension beside me, knew she was ready to jump in and defend me, but I squeezed her hand under the table. Not yet. To family. Elias raised his glass, oblivious to the undercurrents. To family, everyone echoed. I raised my glass, too, catching Alvin's eye across the table. He knew, or at least he suspected. The pieces were falling into place, and soon the whole picture would be clear to everyone. More cake, anyone? Mom asked, trying to break the tension she couldn't quite understand. Actually, I said, standing up, I think it's time I shared some news of my own. But before I could continue, Dad's phone rang. Hold that thought, sweetheart. Elias, son, it's that reporter from Forbes. Everyone quiet. I sat back down, watching Dad fawn over Elias's upcoming magazine feature. The time wasn't quite right, but it was coming. Danielle! Sophia grabbed my arm, pulling me into the study. You need to see this right now. She thrust her phone in front of my face, open to a breaking news article. Anonymous lawyer behind industry-shaking victory revealed? I read aloud, my stomach dropping. Who leaked this? Keep reading, Sophia urged. The article didn't name me directly, but contained enough details that anyone paying attention could connect the dots, especially anyone who, say, ran a company that had mysteriously benefited from the case. Does anyone else know? I asked. Alvin's been reading it for the last 10 minutes. He keeps looking at you like you're a puzzle he's trying to solve. A knock at the study door made us both jump. Speaking of the devil, Alvin stood there, phone in hand. Interesting reading material, he said, stepping in and closing the door behind him. Very interesting coincidence, don't you think? I'm sure I don't know what you mean, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Cut the act, Danielle. This was you, wasn't it? The lawsuit, the regulations, all of it? Before I could respond, the door opened again. Elias walked in, all smiles. There you are. Dad's looking for, what's going on? Nothing, Alvin said quickly. Just discussing some legal matters with your sister. Legal matters? Elias laughed. Come on, Alvin. We've got investors waiting on the phone. Whatever small-time case Danielle's working on can wait. I saw Sophia's hand tighten around her phone. Small time? She muttered. Actually, Alvin started, but I cut him off with a look. Go ahead, Elias. Don't keep your investors waiting on my account. After they left, Sophia turned to me. You're really going to let him keep talking to you like that? For now. A commotion from the living room drew us out. Laura was reading something on her tablet, her face growing increasingly pale. Honey, she called to Elias, you might want to see this. Not now, dear. I'm on the phone with... Now, she insisted, her eyes flicking to me. I felt a small thrill of satisfaction. Laura was smart. She'd figured it out, too. What's all the fuss about? Dad asked, peering over Laura's shoulder at the tablet. His eyes widened slightly as he read. It says here that a female lawyer from Morris and Stanley... He trailed off, looking up at me with an unreadable expression. What about Morris and Stanley? Elias asked, finally hanging up his phone. Nothing, I said smoothly. Just some industry news. Nothing as important as your investor call. Lisa appeared at my side, practically vibrating with suppressed emotion. Danielle, please, let me tell them. Tell us what? Mom asked, entering the room with a fresh tray of cookies. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Alvin was still staring at his phone. Laura was looking between me and Elias with growing anxiety, and Dad seemed frozen in place, the article still visible on Laura's tablet. Well, Sophia broke the silence, journalist instincts kicking in. It seems there's been a rather significant development in the legal world, a case that's changed the entire industry landscape. Isn't that right, Danielle? Is this about that class action thing? Elias asked dismissively. The one that coincidentally helped our company? Coincidentally, I repeated, the word tasting bitter. Right. Danielle, Alvin said slowly, how long have you been working on this case? 3 years, Lisa answered for me. 3 years of hell, fighting against impossible odds, while everyone in this room except me treated her work like it was nothing. Lisa, I warned. No, they need to know. They need to understand what you... The sharp ring of Elias's phone cut through the tension. He glanced at the screen. It's Forbes again. Dad, they want to know more about how we positioned ourselves to take advantage of the regulatory changes. I couldn't help it, I laughed. The sound was sharp and sudden, making everyone turn to look at me. Something funny, sis? Elias asked. You could say that, I replied, meeting Alvin's knowing gaze across the room. Danielle, Mom said softly, is there something you want to tell us? I looked around the room, at Dad's confused face, at Laura's growing comprehension, at Elias's complete obliviousness to the bomb about to drop. Actually, I said, straightening my shoulders, there is. But maybe we should wait for Elias to finish his interview first. After all, I wouldn't want my little court thing to interrupt his moment of glory. The phone kept ringing in Elias's hand, but he didn't answer it. For the first time that day, his full attention was on me. Answer your phone, Elias, I said sweetly. Forbes is waiting. The tension in the room crackled as Elias looked between his ringing phone and my face. Finally, he declined the call. What's going on, Danielle? He asked, his usual confidence wavering slightly. Yes, dear, Dad chimed in. What exactly are you trying to say? Before I could answer, Alvin stepped forward. I'll tell you what's going on. Your daughter, the one whose work you've been dismissing all day, is the anonymous lawyer behind the biggest corporate lawsuit of the year. The room fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. That's ridiculous, Dad scoffed, but his voice lacked conviction. Danielle handles small claims and minor disputes. This case was worth $50 million, Lisa finished for him, plus regulatory changes that reshaped the entire industry. Laura's hand flew to her mouth. The changes that saved our company were all thanks to your sister-in-law, Sophia confirmed, her journalist smile firmly in place. Quite a story, isn't it? Elias sank into the nearest chair. That's not possible. Oh? I raised an eyebrow. And why's that, brother dear? Because little Danielle couldn't possibly handle something so important? I didn't mean 3 years, I cut him off. 3 years I worked on this case. Every holiday I missed, every family dinner I skipped, every time you all rolled your eyes at my little lawyer thing, I was building the case that would eventually save your company. But, Dad started. But what, Dad? But you didn't notice? But you were too busy praising Elias to see what I was accomplishing? But you never thought I could do something this significant? Mom stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? Would you have listened? Lisa asked sharply. Would any of you have actually paid attention? That's not fair, Laura protested. We always supported... Supported? I laughed. Is that what you call it? Just today you referred to my career as that little lawyer thing, and that was one of the kinder comments. Alvin cleared his throat. The regulatory changes from your lawsuit, they're the only reason our company survived last quarter's market shift. I know, I said quietly. You knew? Elias stood up suddenly. You knew and you didn't say anything? Like you've been saying anything about my achievements for the past decade? The room fell silent again. Dad was staring at the floor, Mom was wringing her hands, and Elias looked like someone had just told him Santa wasn't real. I need a drink, Laura announced, heading for the bar cart. Make it a double, Alvin called after her. So, Sophia said brightly, pulling out her reporter's notebook, anyone want to comment on the record about this fascinating turn of events? Put that away, I told her, but I couldn't help smiling. Danielle, Dad finally spoke, his voice unusually quiet. I don't know what to say. That's a first. Danny, Elias stepped toward me. I had no idea. I mean, I knew you were working hard, but this? But you never thought to ask what I was working on, did you? None of you did." The sound of glass shattering made everyone jump. Laura had dropped her drink, the amber liquid spreading across the hardwood floor. "Sorry," she mumbled. "It's just, all this time, our company's success was thanks to the person you've all been patronizing since childhood," Lisa finished. "Ironic, isn't it?" Dad took a step toward me, then stopped. For the first time in my life, he looked uncertain. "Sweetheart, Save it." I held up a hand. "I didn't do this for your approval. I did it because it was the right thing to do. The fact that it helped Elias's company was just karma, I guess." "Some karma," Alvin muttered. Elias's phone rang again. This time he turned it off completely. "I think," he said slowly, "we need to have a family meeting, a real one, where we actually listen to each other." "That would be a nice change," I said. "Danielle," Mom touched my arm, "we're so proud." "Don't," I cut her off. "Don't say you're proud now, not when you weren't interested before." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone seemed to be processing the shift in family dynamics, the realization that the hierarchy they'd taken for granted had been built on sand. "Well," Sophia broke the tension, "I believe this calls for champagne. The good kind, not the stuff you've been serving all day." As she went to fetch the bottles, I caught Lisa's eye. She gave me a subtle nod, the kind that said, "Well done," and "It's about time," all at once. The storm had broken, but the aftermath was just beginning. To unexpected victories, Sophia raised her champagne glass, breaking the uncomfortable silence that had settled over the room. "And to the people who never saw them coming," Lisa added pointedly. Dad cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should make a toast to my brilliant sister," Elias interrupted, standing up, "who not only won an impossible case, but saved my company in the process." I nearly choked on my champagne. "Really, Elias? Now you want to acknowledge my achievements?" "Danny, I know I've been an arrogant, self-centered," Lisa started. "Lisa," I warned, though I couldn't help smiling. "No, she's right," Elias said. "I've been exactly that. We all have." Laura stepped forward, wineglass trembling slightly in her hand. "The press will want to know who is behind the lawsuit. Once they connect the dots, they'll realize that the golden boy's success came from his overlooked sister," Sophia finished, scribbling in her notebook again. "Are you recording all this?" Laura asked nervously. "Every word," Sophia grinned. "It's not every day you witness such a perfect example of poetic justice." Dad suddenly stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air." "Running away from my success, Dad?" The words flew out before I could stop them. "That's new. Usually you just ignore it." He froze mid-step. "That's not fair, Danielle." "Fair?" I laughed. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you skipped my law school graduation for Elias's corporate retreat? Was it fair when you dismissed every case I won as beginner's luck? I never meant to." "To what? Make me feel worthless? To treat everything I did like it was somehow less important than Elias's achievements?" The room fell silent again. Mom was crying quietly in the corner, while Laura and Alvin exchanged uncomfortable glances. "You know what the funny thing is?" I continued, the champagne making me bold. "All those times you bragged about Elias's business instincts, his perfect timing, it was my work that made it possible. My little lawyer thing saved his company." Elias stepped toward me. "Danny, I had no idea the regulatory changes came from your case. If I'd known..." "You'd what? Actually shown interest in my career? Asked me about my work instead of talking over me?" "Yes!" he exploded. "Yes, I would have. Do you think I enjoy knowing that I've been taking credit for my little sister's success?" "Could have fooled me," Lisa muttered. Alvin cleared his throat. "The board will need to know about this. The shareholders, too." "Of course they will," I smiled. "Imagine the headlines. Company's miraculous recovery, actually sister's legal victory." "Danielle," Mom finally spoke up, her voice shaky. "We never meant to make you feel less than—" "But you did," I cut her off. "Every single day. And now—" I gestured around the room. "Now you're all suddenly interested in my work because it benefited Elias?" "That's not—" Laura started. "Save it." I held up my hand. "I don't need your belated approval or your guilty consciences. I did this on my own, despite all of you, not because of you." Dad turned back from the door. "You're right." The room fell silent once again. "What did you say?" I asked, not sure I'd heard correctly. "You're right," he repeated, his voice rough. We've all been wrong, so wrong." "Harrison," Mom whispered. "No, Sophia. Our daughter just won a $50 million lawsuit that changed an entire industry, and we've spent the whole day talking about Elias's phone calls." Elias sat down heavily. "Dad's right. We've been awful." "Terrible," Laura agreed. "The worst," Alvin added. "Well," Sophia said brightly, "this is getting good. Mind if I record?" "Sophia!" several voices protested at once. "What? This is solid gold. The overlooked daughter, the prodigal son, the family revelation. It's perfect." "It's private now," Mom said firmly. "Is it?" I asked. "Weren't you all just celebrating Elias's success publicly? Why should my victory be kept quiet?" The implications of my words hung in the air. Everyone knew that tomorrow the story would break. The anonymous lawyer would be revealed, and the connection to Elias's company would become public knowledge. "To my sister." Elias raised his glass again, his voice sincere for the first time that day. "The real success story in this family." I looked at him over my champagne glass, seeing real regret in his eyes. Better late than never, I suppose, but we all knew this was just the beginning. The real storm was still coming. "The story's breaking," Sophia announced, holding up her phone. "My editor just pushed it live." The notification pinged on everyone's phones simultaneously. I watched as their faces changed while reading the headline. "Anonymous legal crusader revealed how one lawyer's victory saved her brother's company." "They used my favorite photo of you," Lisa grinned, showing me her screen. "The one from after we won." Dad's face had gone pale as he scrolled through the article. "In a twist of karmic justice," he read aloud, "the overlooked younger sister of business mogul Elias proved to be the family's true powerhouse." "Keep reading," Sophia encouraged. "It gets better." "Sources close to the family describe a pattern of dismissive behavior toward the accomplished attorney's achievements." Laura trailed off, looking uncomfortable. "Who were these sources?" Elias demanded. "A good journalist never reveals—" Sophia began. "It was me." Lisa stood up. "I told her everything. Every missed graduation, every dismissive comment, every time they chose your events over hers. Someone needed to tell the truth." Mom sank into a chair. "It's all there. Everything we did, everything we didn't do." "The phone's starting to ring," Alvin announced, holding up his buzzing cell. "Business reporters, investors, everyone wants a comment." "Let them wait," Elias said firmly. He turned to me. "Danielle, I need to say something." "Save your speech, Elias. I don't need—" "No, you need to hear this, and everyone else needs to hear it too." He stood up, addressing the room. "My sister is brilliant. She's always been brilliant, and I've spent years taking advantage of her success while pretending I didn't notice it." "Elias," Laura touched his arm. "Let me finish. That company everyone's been congratulating me about, it would be bankrupt right now if it weren't for Danielle. All those regulatory changes that fell into our lap, that was her. She fought for 3 years while we mocked her dedication, and she won. She won big." Dad stepped forward. "Sweetheart, I don't know how to even begin to apologize." "Then don't," I cut him off. "Don't apologize because you have to, because it's gone public, because you're embarrassed. That's not what I want." "What do you want?" Mom asked softly. "I want you to understand what you did. Really understand it. How it felt to sit at every family dinner and listen to endless praise for Elias while my achievements weren't even worth mentioning. How it felt to win case after case and have them dismissed as cute little victories. How it felt to fight the biggest battle of my career, knowing none of you cared enough to even ask about it. The silence that followed was deafening. $50 million, Alvin whispered, shaking his head. You won $50 million and reshaped an entire industry. And saved your company in the process, Lisa added. Don't forget that part. More phones started ringing. The story was spreading. We need to make a statement, Laura said, her PR instincts kicking in. Get ahead of this. Oh, now you want to talk about my work? I laughed. Now it's important enough to discuss? Danny, Elias started. Don't Danny me. You don't get to act like the proud big brother now. None of you get to pretend you've always supported me. The truth is out there now, all of it. Sophia's phone buzzed again. Your firm's releasing a statement. They're naming you as lead counsel on the case. Good, I said firmly. No more hiding in the shadows. No more being the family afterthought. Dad sank into a chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I failed you. Yes, I agreed. You did. All of you did. But you know what? I succeeded anyway. Without your support, without your approval, without your notice, I did it all on my own. Not entirely on your own, Lisa corrected, squeezing my hand. Some of us always knew how amazing you are. The room fell quiet again, broken only by the constant buzzing of phones. The story was everywhere now, impossible to ignore, impossible to minimize. So, I said, looking around at my shell-shocked family, who wants to do another family photo, this time with the actual success story in the center? Mom burst into tears. Dad looked like he'd been punched. Elias just nodded slowly, understanding the justice in my words. I think, Sophia said, still typing on her phone, this is going to be one hell of a story. It already is, I replied, watching my family's carefully constructed hierarchy crumble around us. It already is. The truth was finally out, and there was no going back. The overlooked sister had stepped into the spotlight, and this time no one could look away. Ready for this? Lisa asked, straightening my blazer as we stood outside the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see them all waiting. Dad, Mom, Elias, Laura, Alvin, and a room full of board members and reporters. The first joint press conference between my firm and my brother's company. I've been ready my whole life, I replied, pushing open the door. Camera flashes erupted as I walked to the podium, Elias stepping aside to make room for me. The gesture wasn't lost on anyone, especially not Dad, whose eyes followed my every move. Good morning, I began, my voice steady. Today, we're announcing a historic partnership between Morris and Stanley Law and Wright Industries. As I outlined the details of how my legal victory had transformed the industry and saved multiple companies, including my brother's, I watched my family's faces. Mom was crying again, but this time they were different tears. Dad sat straight-backed, actually listening to every word. Elias nodded along, no longer trying to steal the spotlight. And now, I concluded, I'll take your questions. A forest of hands shot up. I pointed to a reporter in the front row. How does it feel to have saved your brother's company while remaining anonymous for so long? It feels, I glanced at Elias, like justice. Another reporter stood. Mr. Wright, how did you feel when you learned the truth about your sister's role in your company's survival? Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but Elias stepped forward to the microphone. I felt ashamed, he said simply. Ashamed that I'd spent years overlooking my sister's brilliance. But mostly I felt proud. Prouder than I've ever been of any of my own achievements. The room buzzed with excitement at his candor. Ms. Wright, another reporter called out, will you be taking a position with your brother's company? No, I smiled. I'm quite happy where I am, leading my own team, fighting my own battles, but our firms will be working together moving forward. As equals, Elias added firmly. After the press conference in the privacy of the boardroom, Dad finally spoke up. Danielle, I've been trying to find the right words. Don't strain yourself, Dad, I said, but without the bitterness that had colored my voice for so long. No, please, let me say this. He stood up, looking older, but somehow more human than I'd ever seen him. I spent years looking for success in all the wrong places. I was so busy watching Elias that I missed the real powerhouse right in front of me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I haven't earned that yet, but I am asking for a chance to do better. Mom reached for his hand, then mine. We both are. Well, I said, you can start by coming to my court appearances. I have another big case starting next month. Front row, Dad promised. Every day. Even if Elias has a board meeting? I challenged. He can handle those on his own, Dad replied firmly. I want to watch my daughter in action. Elias cleared his throat. Speaking of action, Danielle, would you consider joining our board of directors? Not as an employee, but as an independent member. We could use your legal expertise. And your integrity, Laura added quietly. I looked at Lisa, who gave me an encouraging nod. I'll think about it. That's more than we deserve, Alvin admitted. Sophia, who'd been scribbling notes in the corner, looked up. This is going to make one hell of a follow-up story. Family reconciliation in the wake of legal victory. No, I corrected her. Family learns to see clearly for the first time. I like that, Mom smiled tearfully. As we gathered our things to leave, Dad touched my arm. Danielle, that photo you mentioned, the one with you in the center, what about it? Can we take it now? Not for the press, not for show, just for us. To remember this moment when everything changed. I looked around at my family, really looked at them. Dad's hopeful expression, Mom's gentle smile, Elias's genuine respect, Laura's newfound humility, Alvin's grudging admiration, and beside me, Lisa's unwavering support and Sophia's chronicling presence. Okay, I agreed. But this time, I'm not standing on the edges. No, Elias said firmly. This time, you're exactly where you belong, in the spotlight. As we posed for the photo, I realized something. Success wasn't just about winning cases or proving people wrong. Sometimes it was about giving people the chance to prove themselves right. Everyone ready? Sophia held up her camera. Ready, I said, standing tall in the center of my family, no longer overshadowed, no longer overlooked. The camera flashed, capturing not just an image, but a new beginning. One where being seen wasn't something I had to fight for. It was something I'd finally earned, and this time, everyone was watching.
I never expected my grandmother's death to spark a war, but looking back, I should have seen it coming. The letter arrived 3 days after we buried her, its crisp white envelope carrying her familiar, elegant handwriting. My name, Callum, written in the careful loops and swirls I'd watched her perfect over countless Sunday afternoons in her garden. My name is Cal, and until last week, I was just the family disappointment, the hawthorn who chose dirt and plants over our prestigious restaurant legacy. Now I'm the unexpected heir to my grandmother's estate, and my entire family has lost their minds. I stood in Grandma Mabel's garden, her letter trembling in my hands as the evening sun cast long shadows across her prized rose bushes. The same roses she'd taught me to tend when I was just a kid with scraped knees and too many questions. You can't be serious. My brother Jackson's voice crackled through my phone's speaker. The house? The whole property? What about the restaurant? The letter's pretty clear, I said, scanning the words again. She left everything to me, Jax. The house, the garden, even her savings. This is bullshit, Cal, and you know it. His voice had that edge to it, the one that always preceded an explosion. Dad's already talking to lawyers. You need to do the right thing here. I watched a monarch butterfly land on one of Mabel's white roses. The right thing according to who? Dad. You. According to the family. That property could save the restaurant. We're struggling, Cal. You know this. The butterfly took flight, and I followed its path until it disappeared over the garden wall. Maybe if you and Dad hadn't sunk all that money into that ridiculous expansion. Don't. Jackson cut me off. Don't you dare criticize what you abandoned. Some of us actually stuck around to carry on the family legacy. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Funny how the only legacy that matters is the one you chose. Cal. A new voice joined the conversation, Bianca, Jackson's fiancée. Be reasonable. Your grandmother wouldn't have wanted to cause all this drama. She loved the restaurant too. Did she? I walked over to the greenhouse where Mabel and I had spent countless hours. Because according to this letter, she wanted me to have everything specifically to prevent it from being sold off to save the restaurant. The silence on the other end was deafening. Listen, Bianca's voice turned honey-sweet. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight? We can discuss this as a family. Your mother's making your favorite pasta. I touched the greenhouse door, remembering how Mabel would always say, "Trust the garden, Cal. It never lies." Unlike people who could wrap manipulation in the guise of family dinner. Thanks, but I have plans. I didn't, but they didn't need to know that. I need to start sorting through Grandma's things. Cal, Jackson started, but I ended the call. Inside the greenhouse, everything was exactly as Mabel had left it. Her gardening gloves still draped over her favorite wooden chair, her tools arranged with military precision on the workbench. I unfolded her letter again, reading the last paragraph that had set this whole mess in motion. My dearest Cal, I know this decision won't be popular, but you're the only one who truly understands what I've built here. This garden isn't just plants and soil. It's a testament to choosing your own path, even when others can't understand it. Don't let them destroy it. And Cal, check behind the loose brick in the greenhouse's north wall. There's something else you need to see. I looked up at the north wall, where generations of ivy had made their home. Somewhere behind those leaves was another piece of Mabel's puzzle, and something told me it would only add fuel to this family fire. My phone buzzed again, a text from my mother this time. Your father is very disappointed. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I turned off my phone and started examining the wall. Whatever Mabel had hidden, I needed to find it before anyone else did. Because one thing was becoming crystal clear. This inheritance wasn't just about a house and garden. It was about to expose every crack in our family's carefully maintained facade. The doorbell chimed just as I was prying at the loose brick in the greenhouse. Of course, they wouldn't wait for an invitation. Through the glass walls, I could see my parents' silhouettes approaching, my mother's pearls catching the late afternoon light. I quickly smoothed my dirt-covered hands on my jeans and met them at the garden path. My father's disapproving gaze swept over my casual attire, while my mother clutched her designer handbag like a shield. Callum, my father said, using my full name, never a good sign. We need to discuss this situation like adults. I was just working in the greenhouse, I said, gesturing to my clothes. Let me clean up and... Playing in the dirt again? My mother's smile was tight. Some things never change. We settled in Mabel's kitchen, where the ghost of countless Sunday dinners hung in the air. My mother immediately began straightening things, rearranging the fruit bowl as if its slightly askew position personally offended her. The restaurant's in trouble, Cal, my father began, his voice carrying that familiar weight of expectation. Real trouble. Your brother's been working himself to death trying to keep it afloat. I heard about the expansion problems, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The new location isn't performing well? Don't pretend you care now, my father snapped. You walked away from all that responsibility years ago. Left it all on Jackson's shoulders. My mother touched his arm. Everett, please. We're here to talk solutions. She turned to me, her expression softening in that calculated way I knew too well. Sweetheart, this house. It's just too much for one person. And the maintenance costs alone. I can manage, I said firmly. Grandma Mabel taught me everything about maintaining the property. Ah yes, all those hours wasted in that garden when you should have been learning the business, my father muttered. A memory surfaced, 16-year-old me, proudly showing my father the herb garden I'd planted for the restaurant's kitchen. His dismissive wave as he walked away, saying real men don't play in the dirt. I pushed the memory aside. The property's value could save everything, my mother pressed on. The restaurant, our family's legacy. What about Grandma's legacy? I challenged. This garden was her life's work. It's a hobby, Callum. The restaurant is our family's foundation. My phone buzzed, a text from Tessa. Don't let them bulldoze you. Remember what Mabel always said about standing your ground. I'm not selling, I said, standing up. Grandma left this place to me for a reason. My father's face darkened. You ungrateful. Everett, my mother interrupted, her voice honey-sweet again. Cal, darling, at least look at the offer we've prepared. It's very generous. She pulled out an envelope from her bag, sliding it across the kitchen table. I didn't touch it. This isn't about money, I said. This is about respecting Grandma's wishes. Respect? My father's laugh was harsh. Where was your respect when you abandoned your family obligations? When you left your brother to shoulder everything alone? I didn't abandon anything, I shot back. I chose a different path. Grandma understood that. Your grandmother. My mother hesitated, exchanging a look with my father. She wasn't thinking clearly near the end. Perhaps if we contest the will. Get out. The words came out quiet but firm. Excuse me. My father's face reddened. I said get out. Both of you. And take your offer with you. My mother's face crumpled in that practiced way that used to make me cave instantly. Cal, please. Now. They left, my father's angry muttering mixing with my mother's theatrical sniffles. As their car pulled away, I noticed something had fallen from my mother's bag. A small notebook I recognized as Grandma Mabel's garden journal. Flipping it open, I found recent entries I'd never seen before, including one dated just weeks before her death. The words made my blood run cold. They're planning something. Must protect Cal. Must hide the truth about. The rest of the page was torn out. I looked back toward the greenhouse where the loose brick waited. Whatever Mabel had hidden, I needed to find it fast. Because now I knew, this wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. There was something else, something my family desperately wanted to keep buried. I was still trying to make sense of Mabel's torn journal entry when Tessa called. You need to get down to the county clerk's office. Now. What? Why? Because your brother and his fiancée just walked in with a stack of papers, and I overheard them talking about property transfers. Tessa worked as a legal secretary there. Something's not right, Cal. 20 minutes later, I was speed walking through the courthouse's marble halls, my muddy boots leaving tracks on the polished floor. I rounded the corner just in time to see Bianca at the clerk's window, sliding documents across the counter with perfectly manicured hands. I need to see those papers, I said, stepping up beside her. Bianca's smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. Cal, what a surprise. Family business, you know how it is. Exactly. Which is why I need to see what you're filing. The clerk, an older woman with reading glasses perched on her nose, looked between us uncertainly. Sir, those documents concern my grandmother's property, I said firmly. I'm the legal owner. Actually, Jackson's voice came from behind me. That's what we're here to correct. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, but his jaw was set with determination. The will was never properly executed. We have proof. Proof? I laughed. What proof? Grandma Mabel wasn't competent when she made those changes, Bianca said smoothly. We have medical documentation. The clerk frowned. I'll need to verify. Here. Bianca produced another document with a flourish. Signed by her doctor. I snatched the paper before anyone could stop me. The signature at the bottom made my stomach drop, Dr. James Rivers. Bianca's father. This is fraud, I said, my voice shaking. Your father never treated Grandma. He consulted on her case, Bianca replied. And as a respected neurologist, his opinion carries weight. Mabel was sharp as a tack until the day she died. I snapped. Everyone knew that. Did they? Jackson stepped closer. Or did you just see what you wanted to see? Face it, Cal. She wasn't thinking clearly when she cut everyone else out. She didn't cut anyone out. She made a choice. A choice you manipulated her into making, Bianca said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. All those hours in the garden, playing the devoted grandson while the rest of the family actually worked. Don't you dare. What's going on here? A new voice cut through the tension. Martin Chun, the family's longtime lawyer, stood in the doorway, briefcase in hand. Martin, Jackson started, we were just filing fraudulent documents, it appears. Martin stepped forward, adjusting his glasses. I was Mabel's attorney for 30 years. I supervised the execution of her will, which was witnessed by 2 independent parties. She was completely competent. Bianca's smile finally cracked. This isn't your concern. Actually, it is. Martin turned to the clerk. Please note that any attempts to transfer this property without proper authority could constitute legal fraud. I'll be filing an injunction immediately. The clerk quickly gathered the papers, stamping them with a large red suspended mark. Jackson grabbed my arm as I turned to leave. You're destroying this family. I looked at his hand, then into his eyes. No, Jax. You're doing that all on your own. Back in Mabel's garden, I finally found the loose brick and the envelope hidden behind it. Inside was a USB drive and another note. The truth about the restaurant's finances. Keep this safe. They'll try anything to hide what really happened to the money. My phone buzzed, a text from Bianca. This isn't over. You have no idea what you're up against. I looked at the USB drive in my hand, then at the garden where Mabel had taught me that growth sometimes requires cutting away the dead parts to save the whole. She'd known this was coming. She'd prepared for it. Game on, I whispered, pocketing the drive. Because now I understood. This wasn't just about saving her garden anymore. This was about exposing whatever rot had taken root in my family's foundation, no matter the cost. I started toward the house, already planning my next move. Behind me, storm clouds gathered over the garden, promising rain. Perfect weather for unearthing buried secrets. The email from Evergreen Landscapes arrived while I was reviewing the files on Mabel's USB drive. A job offer. Not just any job, but the kind that could define a career. Lead designer for their West Coast division, complete with a 6-figure salary and creative control over major projects. The catch? I'd have to move to Seattle. Leave the garden. Leave everything. I was still staring at the screen when Tessa showed up with coffee and a determined look in her eyes. You're brooding, she said, setting a cup beside me. I can smell it from the driveway. Look at this. I turned the laptop toward her, then gestured at the scattered financial documents surrounding it. And all this? The restaurant's been hemorrhaging money for years. But not because of bad business. Tessa leaned in, scanning the numbers. Someone's been cooking the books? More like feeding them steroids. The expansion money? Most of it disappeared into offshore accounts. I rubbed my eyes. Jackson's signature is all over these transfers, but the patterns, they're too sophisticated for him. Bianca, Tessa said quietly. She worked in corporate finance before getting engaged to Jackson. My phone buzzed, another text from Martin Chin. Meeting tomorrow. Bring the evidence. And Cal, watch your back. The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Through the window, I spotted a sleek black car I didn't recognize. Mr. Hawthorne? A woman in a crisp suit stood at the door, flanked by 2 men carrying briefcases. I'm Rebecca Walsh, representing Evergreen Landscapes. We were in the area and thought we'd discuss our offer in person. My stomach dropped. No one just happens to be in the area with a full legal team. This isn't a good time. Actually, she stepped forward, it's the perfect time, especially given your current family situation. The way she said it made my skin crawl. In the kitchen, Tessa was quickly gathering the scattered documents. How did you know about that? Rebecca smiled. We do our homework, Mr. Hawthorne. We also know about the attempted property transfer today. You're fighting a losing battle here. We're offering you an exit strategy. The garden can be maintained by professionals. We'll even include it in your contract. But you need to decide quickly. She checked her watch. Before things get messy, eh? What does that mean? It means your brother's fiancé has friends in high places. The kind who can make fraud allegations stick, regardless of truth. The kind who can ensure you never work in this industry again. My hands clenched. Are you threatening me? I'm offering you protection. And an opportunity. She placed her card on the counter. You have 24 hours. Choose wisely. After they left, Tessa found me in the greenhouse, aggressively pruning Mabel's roses. Cal, stop. You're butchering them. I looked down at the mangled stems. They knew about the property transfer attempt. Hours after it happened. How? Because this was never just about the garden. Tessa picked up one of the fallen roses. Think about it. The restaurant's money laundering, Bianca's connections, this sudden job offer. They're trying to get you out of the way. But why? What's so important about this property? Tessa's eyes widened as she looked past me. Cal, the zoning maps in Mabel's files. Did you check them? I hadn't. We rushed back to the laptop, pulling up the documents. There it was, a proposed rezoning plan for the entire neighborhood, with Mabel's property at its center. Prime location for a massive commercial development. This is what they're after, I whispered. The garden's just collateral damage. My phone buzzed again, Jackson. Take the job offer, Cal. Please. While you still can. For the first time, I heard real fear in my brother's message. Whatever was happening, he was in deep. Maybe too deep. The rose in Tessa's hand had left a trail of petals on the floor. Red drops like blood, marking a path I had to choose. Run toward safety or stay and fight, knowing it might cost me everything. Mabel's voice echoed in my memory. Sometimes the hardest growth comes from standing your ground. I picked up Rebecca's card and slowly tore it in half. Call Martin, I told Tessa. Tell him to bring everything he has tomorrow. It's time to prune the family tree. Martin Chen's office felt too small for the weight of what we were discussing. The financial records from Mabel's USB drive were spread across his desk like a paper trail of betrayal, each document adding another layer to the conspiracy. They're planning to demolish the entire historic district, Martin said, adjusting his glasses. Your grandmother's property is the keystone. Without it, their development plans fall apart. And the restaurant? I asked, though I already knew the answer. A front. They've been laundering money through it for years. Your brother's signature is on everything, but, Martin hesitated. But what? The patterns match other cases I've seen. Cases involving the Rivers family's development company. My phone buzzed, a text from Jackson. Need to talk. Alone. Please. I showed Martin the message. He shook his head. Don't go. It's too risky. But I was already standing. He's still my brother. The restaurant was closed when I arrived, but the lights were on. Through the window, I could see Jackson sitting at the bar, looking older than his 34 years. You shouldn't have come, he said as I walked in. But I'm glad you did. Start talking. He poured 2 whiskeys, sliding one toward me. I never wanted any of this. The restaurant, the expansion, the development deals, it was all Dad and Bianca. I just wanted to make them proud. He laughed bitterly. To survive. You got out, Cal. You had the courage to walk away. I got trapped. So tell the truth. Help me stop them. I can't. His hands shook as he reached for his glass. Bianca's father. He doesn't just destroy businesses, Cal. He destroys lives. The front door chimed. Bianca walked in, followed by my father and 2 men I didn't recognize. Well, isn't this touching? Bianca's smile was sharp. The prodigal brothers reunited at last. You set me up, I said to Jackson. He couldn't meet my eyes. Nothing personal, one of the men said, moving to block the exit. Just business. My father stepped forward. Sign the papers, Cal. Transfer the property. We can all walk away from this. Walk away. I laughed. Like you walked away from Grandma Mabel when she refused to sell? Is that why she died so suddenly? The room went silent. Jackson's face drained of color. Careful, little brother, Bianca warned. Some accusations can't be taken back. Like money laundering? Or fraud? I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. Everything you just said is being recorded. And live-streamed to Tessa. The bigger man started forward, but Bianca held up her hand. You're bluffing. Check your phones, I said. It should be hitting social media right about now. They all reached for their phones. In the chaos, I edged toward the door. You idiot, my father snarled. You'll destroy everything. No, I said. You did that yourself. I'm just pruning away the rot. I made it outside just as police sirens started wailing in the distance. Tessa was waiting in her car around the corner, engine running. Did you get it? I asked as I jumped in. She held up her phone, grinning. Every word. The police and FBI are on their way. Martin's meeting us at the station. As we drove away, I watched the restaurant shrink in the rearview mirror. The place that had imprisoned my brother and corrupted my family, now about to become a crime scene. My phone buzzed one last time, a message from an unknown number. Your grandmother would be proud. But this isn't over. I stared at the message, wondering if it was from Martin or someone else. Because despite everything we'd just exposed, something told me we'd only scratched the surface of what Mabel had discovered. You okay? Tessa asked. I thought about Jackson's haunted eyes, my father's rage, and Bianca's cold smile. About the garden waiting at home, where tomorrow I'd plant new seeds in soil enriched by everything that had died before. No, I said honestly. But I will be. The sirens grew louder behind us, their wail mixing with the night air like justice finally breaking free of its chains. Sometimes I realized revenge doesn't taste like victory. Sometimes it tastes like survival. The wedding invitation arrived exactly 1 month after my father's arrest. Cream-colored paper with gold embossing, like nothing was wrong. Like our family hadn't just imploded in a scandal that made headlines across 3 states. You're not actually going, Tessa said, watching me turn the invitation over in my hands. We were sitting in Mabel's kitchen, where the morning light still couldn't chase away the shadows of recent events. Jackson posted bail for Dad, I said. Used everything he had left. That's not an answer. I traced the embossed letters. Despite everything, the fraud charges, the ongoing investigation, the revelations about Mabel's death, Jackson and Bianca were moving forward with their wedding. At the restaurant of all places. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. He's your father, Cal. Whatever you think he did, he doesn't deserve this. Another message followed. Jackson needs his brother there. Please don't make this harder. I laughed bitterly. Make this harder? They tried to frame me for fraud, threaten me with thugs, and possibly. I couldn't finish the sentence about Mabel. The investigation was still ongoing, but the evidence pointed to her death being far from natural. Which is exactly why you shouldn't go, Tessa insisted. The doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Martin Chen's car in the driveway. It's not good, he said as soon as I let him in. The Rivers family is pushing back hard. Their lawyers are trying to discredit the evidence, claiming it was obtained illegally. But the live stream? They're saying it was edited, manipulated. Martin looked exhausted. And Jackson? He's changed his statement. Says you set them up, that you're the one who orchestrated everything. The kitchen suddenly felt too small. Through the window, I could see Mabel's garden, where the roses she'd loved so much were beginning to wilt. Why would he do that? Because I had to. Jackson's voice came from the doorway. None of us had heard him come in. He looked terrible, thin, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. They have Mom, Cal. What? She's resting at Bianca's family estate. They're calling it a nervous breakdown, but... He swallowed hard. I had to change my statement. I had to protect her. The pieces clicked into place. The wedding wasn't a celebration. It was a show of force. A message that the Rivers family was still in control. The invitation, I said slowly. It's a trap, isn't it? Jackson wouldn't meet my eyes. Just come to the wedding, Cal. Please. Make a speech, wish us well, show everyone that the family drama was overblown. Maybe then what? They'll let Mom go. They'll forget about destroying everything Mabel built. They'll let us live, Jackson whispered. After he left, I stood in the garden, surrounded by dying roses. Everything Mabel had created, everything she'd fought to protect, was slipping away. And now I had to choose between justice for her death and my mother's safety. There might be another way, Martin said, joining me outside. But it's risky, and you'd have to trust me completely. I looked at the wilting garden, remembering Mabel's words about growth requiring sacrifice. About how sometimes you had to cut away what you love to save what matters most. Whatever it takes, I said. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Bianca. Looking forward to having the whole family together again. Don't forget to wear black. It's a formal affair after all. The threat wasn't even subtle anymore. Wear black like we're all attending a funeral. Maybe we were. I picked up a dead rose, its petals crumbling in my hand. Tell me the plan, Martin, and then help me find a suit. Because sometimes, to save what you love, you have to walk straight into the dragon's lair. Even if you know you might not walk back out. Tessa touched my arm. Cal. I know, I said, watching the rose petals scatter in the wind. But Mabel taught me that every garden needs pruning sometimes. Even if it means cutting all the way down to the roots. The restaurant gleamed like a funeral parlor, all black ties and forced smiles. I adjusted my dark suit, the same one I'd worn to Mabel's funeral, and walked into the lion's den. Bianca had transformed the place, replacing its warm family atmosphere with cold elegance. Black roses everywhere, their thorns prominently displayed. A message just for me. Cal. My mother's voice trembled as she approached, flanked by two of Bianca's cousins, men with hard eyes and concealed weapons. You came. Her hands shook as she reached for me, and I saw the faint bruising around her wrist. My blood boiled, but I kept my face neutral. Martin's plan required patience. Wouldn't miss it, I said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Where's the happy couple? Making an entrance, of course. Mayor Davidson appeared beside me, champagne in hand. Though I must say, I'm more interested in your work, Cal. That community garden project of yours has everyone talking. Bianca materialized before I could respond, resplendent in white. Mayor Davidson, I'm so glad you could make it. Though perhaps we should discuss the development proposal, rather than gardening. Actually, the mayor said, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Seems there are some irregularities in the paperwork. A commotion near the entrance cut him off. Jackson burst in, his face ashen. The FBI. There. The doors flew open. Agents poured in, led by Martin Chun, not just a lawyer, but a federal investigator who'd been building this case for years. Nobody move. Martin's voice boomed. We have warrants for multiple arrests. Bianca's smile turned razor-sharp. This is a private event. Whatever you think you have. We have everything, I said quietly. The real estate fraud, the money laundering, the offshore accounts. And Mabel's autopsy results. Her composure cracked. You're bluffing. The garden soil, Bianca. Did you know Mabel tested it regularly? Kept records of every chemical change. I stepped closer, including the poison that showed up 3 days before she died. One of Bianca's cousins reached inside his jacket. 3 agents immediately drew weapons. "It's over," Martin announced. "Bianca Rivers, Everett Hawthorne, you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and first-degree murder." My father, who'd been silent until now, lunged for me. "You ungrateful." Jackson caught him, surprising everyone. "Stop, Dad. Just stop." The mayor watched in shock as agents led Bianca away. "My God, I had no idea. That's why they wanted the garden gone," I said. "It held the evidence. Mabel knew what they were doing, so they killed her. But she'd already prepared her revenge." "The inheritance," Jackson whispered. "She left it to you because I was the only one who would understand the garden's secrets." I touched one of the black roses. "She taught me that every plant tells a story if you know how to read it." As the chaos unfolded, my mother collapsed into my arms, finally free from her captors. "I'm so sorry, Cal. We should have listened." "Mrs. Hawthorne," Martin interrupted gently, "we'll need your statement about your detention at the Rivers estate." I watched them lead my father away in handcuffs, saw Bianca's mask of sophistication crumble as agents read her rights. The restaurant, the source of so much family strife, would likely be seized as evidence. Jackson stood alone by the altar, his world imploding. What happens now? Now! I looked at the black roses, thinking of Mabel's garden waiting at home. Now we start over. Plant something new. Together? He sounded like the brother I'd once known, before ambition and greed poisoned everything. "Maybe, if you're willing to get your hands dirty." The mayor cleared his throat. "Speaking of new growth, Cal, I'd love to discuss expanding your community garden project. The city could use more of your expertise." Outside, police lights painted the night in red and blue. Inside, among the wreckage of what was supposed to be a wedding, I felt Mabel's presence. She'd known it would end this way. Not with a celebration of love, but with justice finally blooming through the cracks of our broken family. I loosened my black tie. Tomorrow, I'd plant white roses in the garden. But tonight, there was one more truth to unearth. 1 year later, I stood in Mabel's garden, my garden now, watching Jackson struggle with a particularly stubborn root. His prison-pale skin was slowly gaining color under the summer sun. "You're doing it wrong," I said, kneeling beside him. "Here, like this." I demonstrated the proper angle, remembering Mabel teaching me the same lesson years ago. 3 months into his community service, and my brother was finally learning the difference between weeds and wildflowers. The judge had been surprisingly poetic in her sentencing. Help restore what his actions had helped destroy. "The mayor called again," Tessa said, appearing with 3 glasses of lemonade. "The community garden network is ready to expand to the next district." I nodded, watching a monarch butterfly land on one of Mabel's white roses, the ones I'd replanted after the wedding that never was. The restaurant was gone now, converted into the city's first urban farming education center. Sometimes karma has a green thumb. "Mom's therapy is going well," Jackson said quietly, accepting the lemonade. "She's talking about volunteering at the center, teaching kids about herbs and cooking. Our father's trial had broken something in her, but like the garden after winter, she was slowly coming back to life. Some plants need severe pruning to grow back stronger." "Found something else too," Jackson added, pulling a weathered envelope from his pocket. "Behind the old restaurant's wine cellar wall during demolition. It's from Mabel." My hands trembled as I opened it. The paper was old, but the words were clear. "My dearest boys, if you're reading this, then everything has happened as I feared it might. But remember, even the hardest soil can nurture new growth if you're willing to work it together." "There's more," Jackson said, his voice thick. "Look at the date. The letter was written the day before she died. She'd known what was coming, had planted the seeds of justice even in her final hours." "Cal!" My mother's voice came from the garden path. She looked smaller now, humbler, but her eyes were clear. "The Heritage Rose Society called. They want to register Mabel's white hybrid officially. Did they say what they'll name it?" She smiled softly. "They're calling it Mabel's Truth." I looked around at what we'd built from the ashes of our family's implosion. The garden had expanded, now feeding 3 local food banks. The education center was thriving. Even Bianca's father's development company had crumbled under federal investigation. "You know what's weird?" Jackson said, finally defeating the stubborn root. "I always thought the restaurant was our legacy. But Mabel knew better. She saw what really needed to grow." A familiar voice seemed to whisper in the breeze. "Trust the garden, Cal. It never lies." "There's something else," Tessa said, holding up her tablet. "Remember that mysterious text you got?" Martin finally traced it. It wasn't from him. Then who? Margaret Rivers, Bianca's grandmother. Turns out she and Mabel were friends in college. She's been feeding information to the FBI for years, trying to stop her own family's corruption. I thought about karma again, about how the truth finds its way to the surface like a determined seedling pushing through concrete. The garden needs a new section, I decided. Something to mark everything that's happened. Any ideas? Jackson stood, brushing dirt from his knees. What about a maze? But instead of walls, we use flowering vines. Something that looks complicated from the outside, but actually leads to something simple. Like truth, our mother added softly. I picked up my gardening tools, Mabel's old ones that still fit my hands perfectly. Better get started then. These things take time to grow. As we worked together under the summer sun, I realized that revenge, like gardening, isn't about destruction. It's about clearing space for something better to grow. Mabel had taught me that, in her own way, through every seed we'd planted together. The butterfly took flight, rising above the garden where our family was slowly, steadily, putting down new roots. Different from the ones we'd had before, but stronger for having weathered the storm. Sometimes the best revenge is simply growing beyond what others thought possible.
I never planned on becoming invisible in my own home. It happened gradually, like watching a photograph fade in the sun. The irony? While my family saw less and less of who I really was, I was secretly building an empire that would make their jaws drop. My name is Addison, and this morning I watched my 16-year-old daughter, Leah, roll her eyes at me for the 100th time while her friend Sophia sat at our kitchen island. "Mom, can you, not hover? We're trying to study," Leah said, not even looking up from her textbook. "Yeah, sure," I replied, sliding a plate of fresh-baked cookies toward them. "Just thought you might want a snack." "God, Mom, you're so basic," Leah muttered. "This isn't the 1950s. You don't have to play housewife all the time." I caught Sophia's uncomfortable glance as she reached for a cookie. At least someone felt awkward about my daughter's attitude. "Your mom's cookies are amazing, though," Sophia offered kindly. "Whatever. That's literally all she does all day. Dad says she's lucky he makes enough money so she can just stay home and bake." The words stung, but I kept my face neutral as I wiped down the counter. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably Clark with updates about our latest acquisition. I'd have to wait to check it. "Actually," I said carefully, "I have some errands to run. You girls okay here?" Leah waved me off dismissively. As I grabbed my car keys, I heard her continue. "Must be nice, right? Just running errands and watching Netflix all day while Dad actually works?" I closed the door behind me and let out a long breath. If they only knew that the errands involved finalizing a $50 million deal that would reshape the tech industry landscape. 20 minutes later, I sat in my secret office downtown, a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Clark paced in front of my desk, his excitement palpable. "Addison, the board approved it. We're acquiring TechFront." He ran his hands through his salt and pepper hair. "Flynn doesn't even know what hit him. He still thinks he's negotiating with some faceless corporation." I allowed myself a small smile. "Perfect. And the paperwork?" "Ready for your signature, but—" Clark hesitated. "Don't you think it's time to tell your family? This makes you one of the most influential tech entrepreneurs in the country." I spun my chair to face the window, watching the city buzz below. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. The way they treat me lately, maybe it's time for a wake-up call." My phone rang. Uriel's ringtone. My husband calling from his mid-level management job where he felt like a big shot. "Hey, honey," I answered, keeping my voice sweet. "Need something? Did you remember to pick up my dry cleaning? I have that presentation tomorrow." "Of course," I replied, signing the acquisition papers with my free hand. "Anything else?" "No, that's it. Don't wait up tonight. Important dinner meeting." I hung up and turned to Clark. "You know what? You're right. It's time they knew. But we're going to do this my way." Clark raised an eyebrow. "Why do I feel like you're plotting something?" "Because I am." I picked up my phone again and dialed Maya. When she answered, I didn't waste time. "Remember that plan we discussed? I'm ready. Let's set it in motion." "Are you sure?" Maya asked. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure. I'm tired of being invisible. It's time they saw me, really saw me." After hanging up, I looked at Clark. Call a board meeting for next week, and make sure to invite Flynn. He should be there when he realizes who just bought his company. And your family? They'll be there too, they just don't know it yet. I stood up, smoothing my designer blazer. It's time they learned that the lazy, stay-at-home mom they mock is actually the one keeping their comfortable lifestyle afloat. Clark grinned. This is going to be interesting. Oh, it will be, I said, gathering my things. But first I need to go home and play my part. Leah needs help with her calculus homework, and Uriel needs his shirts pressed for tomorrow. As I drove home, I felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Was I really ready to shatter the illusion I'd carefully maintained for years? The weight of my secret empire had grown too heavy to carry alone. My phone buzzed again, another message from the board about the acquisition. I smiled, thinking about how next week would change everything. Sometimes the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a side of humble pie at a board meeting no one sees coming. I thought we could do something special as a family next week, I announced over dinner, watching Uriel scroll through his phone while Leah pushed her food around her plate. Uriel barely looked up. Next Thursday. I made reservations downtown for lunch. I thought it might be nice. Leah's head snapped up. I can't. I have cheer practice. Actually, I said, taking a sip of water, I already spoke with your coach. She said you could miss one practice. You what? Leah's fork clattered against her plate. Mom, you can't just... And I have meetings, Uriel interrupted, finally looking up from his phone. I smiled sweetly. I checked with your assistant, Sarah. Your calendar is clear after 11. That got his attention. You called my assistant? I wanted to make sure we could all be there. It's important. Important? Leah scoffed. What could be so important about lunch with you? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Urgent. Flynn making moves. Trying to block the acquisition. Need to talk ASAP. I kept my face neutral, though my heart raced. It's a surprise. Trust me, you'll want to be there. Whatever, Leah muttered, returning to her phone. Later that night, I paced in my home office, speaking quietly with Maya on the phone. Flynn's lawyers are claiming the deal is fraudulent, Maya explained. They're demanding to meet the CEO in person. He's just throwing a tantrum because he doesn't know who outmaneuvered him, I replied. Have Clark handle it for now. Next week, Flynn will get his meeting, along with my family. About that, are you sure mixing these two situations is wise? I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly switched to my mom voice. Yes, honey, I'll make sure to pick up more milk tomorrow. Leah appeared in the doorway. Mom, who are you talking to? Just Mrs. Peterson from the neighborhood watch, I lied smoothly. Did you need something? She lingered, looking uncertain. About Thursday. Do I really have to come? I saw a flicker of genuine curiosity in her eyes. Yes, sweetheart, but I promise it'll be worth it. After she left, I texted Maya, proceed as planned, and upgrade the security for Thursday. The next morning, I drove downtown after dropping Leah at school. Clark was waiting in my office, looking worried. Flynn's getting aggressive, he said without preamble. He's threatening to go to the press. Let him, I replied, logging into my computer. By Thursday, it won't matter. There's something else. Clark handed me an envelope. This came this morning. Inside was a typed note. Back off from TechFront, or your secret life won't be secret much longer. I laughed, surprising Clark. Flynn's getting desperate. He still doesn't realize he's dealing with a woman, does he? No, but... Then let him play his games. Thursday will be quite educational for everyone. My phone rang. Uriel again. Honey, about Thursday. I really don't think I can make it. The quarterly reports... Uriel, I cut him off, my voice firm but gentle. One lunch, that's all I'm asking. When was the last time we did something as a family? He sighed. Fine, but this better be good. Oh, it will be. I hung up and turned to Clark. Make sure the conference room is ready. And Clark, let's add some dramatic flair. I want the big screen showing our company's portfolio when they walk in. You're enjoying this, aren't you? 16 years of being underestimated, dismissed, and treated like I'm nothing but a housewife. I smiled. Yes, I'm going to enjoy every second. That evening, I overheard Leah talking to Sophia on the phone in her room. Mom's being weird. She's planning this mysterious lunch downtown. No, I have no idea what it's about. Dad thinks she's probably just lonely or something. I know, right? Like get a hobby or something. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. Soon they would understand. Soon they would see. My phone buzzed with another threatening message. Last warning, walk away now. I typed back a single response. Looking forward to meeting you on Thursday, Flynn. Then I walked into the kitchen, put on my apron, and started baking cookies. The perfect housewife, preparing for her moment of truth. Let them think I'm nothing. Let them underestimate me one last time. Because on Thursday, the mask comes off. And nobody, not Flynn, not Uriel, not even Leah, is ready for what's behind it. Maya sat across from me in our favorite coffee shop, the same one where we'd first hatched the plan for my company 7 years ago. Remember when you walked in here furious because Uriel told you to stick to what you're good at after you suggested investing in tech stocks? I smiled, stirring my latte. He lost $50,000 that year in bad investments. I made my first $1 million. While he thought you were taking cooking classes. Maya leaned forward. But Addison, are you ready for what this revelation might do to your family? The bell above the door chimed and Clark rushed in, looking flustered. Sorry I'm late. Flynn's lawyers are being relentless. They always get aggressive right before they lose, I said, sliding him a coffee. Remember that deal in 2019? How could I forget? You were in the hospital having your appendix removed and still managed to close the deal. Clark chuckled. Uriel thought you were delirious from pain meds when you kept talking about market projections. He told the nurse I was just rambling nonsense. I gripped my cup tighter. That's when I knew I could never tell him. Not until I was so successful he couldn't possibly dismiss it. Maya touched my hand. And now you're there. Your company's worth billions. Mom? Leah's voice cut through the coffee shop noise like a knife. I turned to see my daughter standing there, shopping bags in hand. She was supposed to be at the mall with Sophia, but apparently they'd decided to stop for coffee. What are you doing here? She asked, eyes darting between my companions. I thought you were grocery shopping. Just catching up with some friends, I said smoothly. You remember Maya from the neighborhood barbecue last summer? Leah nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on Clark. And him? Clark, he's an old friend. Right. Leah's tone dripped with skepticism. Well, don't let me interrupt your... whatever this is. As she walked away to join Sophia at another table, I heard her loud whisper. She's being so weird lately. First the mysterious lunch, now secret meetings. Clark waited until she was out of earshot. She's suspicious. Good, I replied. Let her be curious. It'll make Thursday even more interesting. Maya's phone buzzed. Her eyes widened as she read the message. Flynn just called an emergency press conference for tomorrow morning. Perfect timing, I said, pulling out my laptop. Let's give him something to really talk about. I opened my email and drafted a quick message to our board members, copying Flynn's entire executive team. The subject line read, Special announcement, Thursday board meeting. Are you sure about this? Clark asked. Send it, I commanded, hitting the button. And make sure the media gets wind of it too. Flynn wants to play hardball? Let's play. Later that evening, as I prepared dinner, I found myself transported back to the day this all began. Uriel had laughed when I suggested investing our savings in a struggling tech startup. Stick to the grocery budget, honey, he'd said, patting my head like I was a child. Leave the real business to me. That night I'd called Maya, who connected me with Clark. Together we built something extraordinary, all while I maintained my facade of domestic bliss. Mom? Leah's voice pulled me from my memories. She stood in the kitchen doorway looking uncertain. About that coffee shop today, yes? You seemed different with those people, like you were talking about something important. I turned to face her fully. What makes you say that? I don't know, you just seemed more alive? Not like regular mom you. For a moment, I considered telling her everything right then. Instead, I said, Sometimes people are more than what we see on the surface, sweetheart. She rolled her eyes, the moment of insight gone. Whatever. Is dinner ready? I'm starving. My phone buzzed. A news alert about Flynn's upcoming press conference. Below it, a message from Maya. He's going to try to discredit the mystery buyer before Thursday. I smiled, chopping vegetables with renewed vigor. Let him try. He had no idea he was about to face off against the woman he'd dismissed as just another housewife at a charity gala 3 years ago. "Mom?" Leah called from the dining room. "Dad's working late again." "Of course he is," I muttered, then louder. "That's fine, honey. More for us." As I served dinner, my phone lit up with another threat from Flynn. "You can't hide forever. Tomorrow I expose everything." I typed back, "Looking forward to your press conference. Break a leg." Because tomorrow, Flynn would make his move. But Thursday? Thursday would be my checkmate. And my family would have front row seats to the show. Thursday arrived with the weight of destiny. I adjusted Uriel's tie in the elevator of my office building, playing the doting wife one last time. "I still don't understand why we're having lunch here," he grumbled. "The plaza would have been nicer." Leah stood in the corner, tapping away on her phone. "This building's kind of impressive, though. Look at all these tech companies." 32nd floor, I announced as the elevator dinged. "Follow me." "Wait," Uriel stopped short, staring at the directory. "This is the tech front acquisition floor. There's a huge meeting about that today. We shouldn't be here." I smiled, leading them down the hallway. "Actually, we should." Security nodded at me as we approached the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see Flynn pacing, his face red with anger. Board members filled the seats and reporters waited eagerly in the corner. "Mom," Leah whispered, "I think we're in the wrong place." "We're exactly where we need to be." I pushed open the door and every head turned. Flynn froze mid-stride. "What is this? Who let these people in?" Clark stood up. "Everyone, please welcome our CEO." The room fell silent. Uriel grabbed my arm. "Addison, we need to leave. This is a private meeting." "No," I said, shrugging off his hand. "This is my meeting." Flynn's face contorted. "You? You're the mystery buyer? The one who's been trying to take my company?" "Not trying," I corrected, walking to the head of the table. "Succeeding." Leah's phone clattered to the floor. "Mom?" I pulled out the chair at the head of the table. "Please, everyone sit. We have a lot to discuss." "This is ridiculous," Flynn sputtered. "You're nothing but a housewife. I met you at the charity gala. Your husband works in middle management." Uriel's face flushed. "Addison, what's going on?" I nodded to Clark, who clicked a button. The screens around the room lit up with my company's portfolio, achievements, and acquisitions over the past 7 years. 7 years ago, I addressed the room, I started this company with a vision. While everyone thought I was taking cooking classes and running errands, I was building an empire. And today, that empire acquires TechFront. "You're lying," Flynn snapped. "This is impossible." I pulled out a folder. "These documents say otherwise. Your board already approved the sale. They just didn't know who they were selling to." Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras flashed. Leah had sunk into a chair, her face pale. "But the cookies," she whispered. "The carpools, the PTA meetings." "I did it all," I said, my voice firm. "I ran this company and maintained our home because that's what everyone expected of me. No one thought to look deeper because no one thought I was capable of more." Uriel stood frozen, his world visibly crumbling. "All this time?" "Yes," I met his eyes. "All this time." Flynn slammed his hands on the table. "This is a setup. You can't possibly—" "The financials," I cut him off, sliding papers across the table. "The projections, the merger details, everything you dismissed when I tried to discuss them at that gala, saying I should stick to planning parties." The board members examined the documents, nodding with approval. Flynn's face grew redder. "You'll regret this," he hissed, storming toward the door. "I'll fight it." "Your board has already voted," Clark announced. "It's done." As Flynn slammed the door behind him, I turned to my family. Leah's eyes were wide with shock and something else. Was it admiration? "Mom," she started. "Mrs. Davidson," a reporter interrupted. How did you manage to keep this secret for so long? I held up my hand. I'll answer questions later. Right now, I need a moment with my family. The board members and reporters filed out, leaving us alone in the massive conference room. The screens still displayed my achievements, casting a blue glow over our faces. All those times I called you lazy, Leah's voice cracked. When I told my friends you did nothing all day. Those words hurt, I admitted. But they also drove me. Every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every time you both treated me like I was nothing but a housewife, it fueled me. Uriel sank into a chair. The company I've been reading about in the papers, the mysterious tech giant everyone's been trying to identify. That was you? That was me. I stood tall, finally letting my power show. And now you know exactly who I am. The door burst open. Maya rushed in. Addison, Flynn's calling an emergency press conference. He's threatening to expose everything about your personal life. I smiled, feeling more alive than ever. Let him try. I'm done hiding. Looking at my stunned family, I added, we all have some catching up to do. Shall we have that lunch now? The private dining room felt smaller than usual with the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. Leah pushed her salad around the plate while Uriel stared at his untouched steak. So, I broke the silence. Any questions? How much? Uriel asked quietly. How much are you worth? The company's valued at just over $4 billion. I took a sip of water. My personal net worth is around $1.2 billion. Leah's fork clattered against her plate. Billion? With a B? That vacation house in Aspen you wanted last summer? I continued. I own it. Actually, I own the whole development. But you said we couldn't afford it, Leah whispered. No, I said we shouldn't flaunt our money. There's a difference. Maya burst into the room, tablet in hand. Flynn's live on CNBC right now. I nodded to Clark, who grabbed the remote and turned on the dining room's wall-mounted screen. Flynn's red face filled the screen, his tie askew. This hostile takeover is a fraud, he was saying. This woman, this supposed CEO, she's nothing but a housewife playing businesswoman. Mute it, I commanded. Let him rant. The papers are signed. Mom, Leah leaned forward. All those times you were on the phone in your office? Board meetings, acquisitions, running a global company, and the cooking classes? Cover stories, though I did actually learn to make a decent soufflé. Uriel finally looked up. Why didn't you tell me? Really? I set down my fork. Remember when I suggested investing in that startup 7 years ago? You laughed and told me to stick to grocery shopping. I didn't mean... Yes, you did. I turned to Leah. And you? Mom's so basic. All she does is bake cookies. Dad's the only one who actually works. Leah's eyes filled with tears. I'm so sorry. The door burst open again. Addison, Clark interrupted. Flynn's making moves. He's calling in favors, trying to freeze our assets. I stood up, smoothing my blazer. Excuse me for a moment. Feel free to order dessert. Can I watch? Leah asked hesitantly. I paused, then nodded. Come on. We walked to my office, Uriel trailing behind. I sat at my desk, fingers flying over the keyboard while Clark and Maya coordinated with our legal team. Transfer everything to the offshore accounts, I commanded. Execute Protocol Delta. What's happening? Leah whispered to Maya. Your mom's about to show Flynn why you don't underestimate her, Maya replied with a grin. I picked up my phone, putting it on speaker. Hello, Flynn. You think you've won? He snarled. I'm freezing every account. Already moved, I cut him off. And while you were giving your little TV tantrum, my team acquired controlling interest in your private holdings. Check your personal accounts. Silence then. What did you do? The same thing you tried to do to me. Except I succeeded. I leaned back. Would you like to rethink that press conference? You can't. I can. I did. And Flynn, remember when you told me at that gala that I should stick to planning bake sales? I made cookies this morning. Would you like some? They're victory flavored. The line went dead. Leah stared at me, mouth open. Even Uriel looked impressed. Holy shit, Leah breathed. My mom's a badass. Language. I corrected automatically, then smiled. But yes, I am. Maya's tablet pinged. Flynn's retracting his statements. The board's releasing a statement supporting the acquisition. And that, I said, standing up, is how you close a deal. All those times I bragged about Dad's job, Leah said quietly. You were running this empire? While also making your lunch, helping with homework, and yes, baking cookies. I turned to Uriel. I never needed your money. I never needed anyone to take care of me. I just wanted respect. Uriel stepped forward. Addison, Mrs. Davidson? My assistant poked her head in. The press is requesting a statement. I looked at my family. Would you like to see what Mom actually does all day? Leah nodded eagerly. Uriel managed a weak smile. As we walked toward the press room, Leah grabbed my hand. Mom, those cookies you made this morning, were they really victory cookies? No, honey. I squeezed her hand. Those were, I love you even when you underestimate me cookies. The victory cookies are still in the oven at home. Speaking of home, Uriel said softly, I suppose that explains why you insisted on that state-of-the-art kitchen renovation last year. Actually, I smiled, that was just because I really do love baking. Being a CEO doesn't mean I can't also enjoy being a mom. I'm just done pretending that's all I am. The press room doors loomed ahead. Behind them, cameras waited to capture the moment the mysterious CEO finally showed her face. Ready? I asked my family. Ready, they answered, and this time, I believed them. The press conference was a blur of flashing cameras and rapid-fire questions. I stood at the podium, my family watching from the side, as I finally stepped into the light. Yes, I'm the CEO of Summit Technologies, I announced to the packed room. And yes, I'm also a mother and wife who bakes cookies and attends PTA meetings. Mrs. Davidson, a reporter called out, how did you manage to keep this secret for so long? Society's expectations made it easy, I replied. No one looks too closely at a housewife. Suddenly the door burst open. Flynn stormed in, flanked by his lawyers. This isn't over, he announced. We're contesting the acquisition. My lawyers have found irregularities. You mean like your attempt to hide losses in offshore accounts? I interrupted, nodding to Clark, who projected documents onto the screen behind me. Or perhaps your creative accounting with the pension fund? Flynn's face went pale. How did you... I did my homework, Flynn. Every detail, every transaction, every skeleton in your corporate closet. I turned to the reporters. In fact, I have a complete dossier ready for anyone interested in the real story behind TechFront's management. You're bluffing, Flynn sputtered. I pulled out my phone and read, March 15th, meeting in Singapore. You diverted employee pension funds to cover personal losses. April 3rd, backdated contracts to hide. Stop! Flynn's lawyer grabbed his arm. We should discuss this privately. My office, I said coolly. 10 minutes. As they hurried out, Leah stepped forward. Mom, that was incredible. That was nothing, Maya chimed in. You should have seen her handle the Tokyo merger last year. Did it while making your Halloween costume? The robot costume? Leah's eyes widened. The one you said took you 3 weeks to figure out? It did. The merger took 4. I turned back to the reporters. Any other questions? How does your family feel about the revelation? All eyes turned to Uriel and Leah. My daughter surprised me by stepping up to the microphone. I feel ashamed, she said clearly. I underestimated my mom because she didn't fit my idea of what success looks like. But now I see that she's the most successful person I know, not just in business, but in life. The reporters scribbled frantically. I felt tears threatening but held them back. Mrs. Davidson, another reporter called. What about the threats Flynn made? Let's discuss those in my office, I replied. I believe Mr. Flynn and his lawyers should be waiting. As security cleared the room, Uriel touched my arm. Can we watch? I considered for a moment. Actually, yes. It's time you saw what I really do. In my office, Flynn and his lawyers sat nervously. I took my seat behind the desk, my family and team standing behind me. Here's how this will work, I began, sliding a document across the desk. You'll sign this agreement accepting the acquisition terms. In return, I'll keep your creative accounting practices private. You can't prove anything. Flynn's lawyer interjected. I pressed a button on my desk. A recording played, Flynn's voice clearly discussing the pension fund manipulation. That's illegal, Flynn shouted. So was recording it, his lawyer added. Actually, Clark stepped forward, that recording is from your own security system. We just acquired access when we acquired the company. Flynn slumped in his chair. What do you want? I want you to sign the papers, step down gracefully, and never threaten me or my company again. I pushed the document closer. You have 30 seconds to decide before I call the SEC. 28 seconds later, Flynn signed. As security escorted him out, Leah whispered, That was better than any movie I've ever seen. That was better than any movie I've ever been in, Maya added with a laugh. Uriel stepped forward. Addison, I need to say something. Not here, I replied, standing up. Clark, Maya, handle the press release. I'm taking my family home. In the elevator, Uriel tried again. I've been such a fool. Yes, I agreed. You have. All these years, I thought I was supporting our family, but you were carrying us all while letting you believe you were in charge, I finished. Yes. The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. Let's go home, I said. Those victory cookies should be cool enough to eat by now. As we drove home, Leah spoke up from the back seat. Mom, can I help you bake something tomorrow? Of course, honey, but first I have a morning meeting with investors in Tokyo. Can I watch that too? I caught her eye in the rearview mirror and smiled. Absolutely. It's time you learned that women can do anything, including running an empire while making the perfect chocolate chip cookies. Speaking of empire, Uriel said quietly, I think we have a lot to talk about. Yes, I agreed, pulling into our driveway. We certainly do. Back home, the familiar scent of cookies filled the air, but everything else felt different. Leah immediately pulled up news articles about me on her phone while Uriel paced the kitchen. You're trending on Twitter, Leah announced. People are calling you the cookie CEO and the stealth billionaire. We need to talk, Uriel interrupted, his voice strained. Really talk. I pulled the last batch of cookies from the oven. Yes, we do. I'll go to my room. Leah started to stand. No, I said firmly. You're part of this conversation too. Sit. We gathered around the kitchen island, the same spot where they'd dismissed me countless times. The irony wasn't lost on me. How could you not tell me? Uriel finally burst out. We're married. We're supposed to share everything. Share? I laughed sharply. Like how you shared your opinion that women don't understand business? Or how you shared your dismissal of every suggestion I made? That's not fair. Not fair? I slammed my hand on the counter, making them both jump. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about the night I closed my first major deal. I was on the phone in my office for hours, orchestrating a $100 million acquisition. Do you remember what you said when I came to bed late? Uriel looked blank. You said, if you're going to waste time chatting with your friends all night, at least keep it down. Then you asked if I'd remembered to iron your shirts. Leah's eyes filled with tears. Dad, you didn't... And you, I turned to her. Remember last month when I missed your dance recital? You told everyone I was probably just watching soap operas and eating bonbons. Mom, I'm so sorry. I missed it because I was preventing a hostile takeover that would have cost 3,000 people their jobs. I watched the video of your performance during a board meeting break, hiding in my office bathroom so no one would see me cry because I couldn't be there. The silence that followed was deafening. Why did you stay? Uriel whispered. With your money, your power, why put up with our disrespect? Because I love you both, I said simply. And I kept hoping that someday you'd see me, really see me, without needing to know about my success. Leah reached for a cookie, then stopped. All those times you baked? Were you actually on business calls with your earpiece in? Usually. Multitasking becomes second nature when you're living a double life. I smiled slightly. The PTA actually has a lot in common with board meetings, just different stakes. I told my friends you were pathetic, Leah's voice cracked. I was the pathetic one. I was so busy trying to be cool that I couldn't see how amazing you are. Honey. No, Mom. Let me finish. She stood up, tears streaming now. You're like a superhero. You ran this massive company and took care of us and let us treat you like you were nothing. How can you ever forgive me? I reached across the counter and took her hand. Because that's what mothers do. We love unconditionally. I don't deserve it, she whispered. No, Uriel stood up. We don't deserve it. I've been a terrible husband, Addison. I was so wrapped up in my own importance that I made you feel small. God, all those times I bragged about providing for the family. While I quietly paid off the mortgage and funded your successful investments, I added. He winced. I've been such a fool. Yes, you have. I pulled out my phone as it buzzed. Excuse me, Tokyo's calling. They watched in awe as I switched to flawless Japanese, conducting a multi-million-dollar negotiation while sliding another plate of cookies their way. After I hung up, Leah spoke up. Will you teach me? Not just the business stuff, but how to be strong like you. And humble, Uriel added quietly. I have a lot to learn about that. I looked at my family, really looked at them. The arrogance was gone from Uriel's face, replaced by genuine remorse and admiration. Leah's usual teenage disdain had transformed into something like reverence. Okay, I said. Let's start over, but this time we do it as equals. No more hiding, no more dismissing each other. Deal, they said in unison. My phone buzzed again, Clark with acquisition updates. But for once, it could wait. Right now, I had more important things to focus on. So, I smiled, who wants to learn how to make my famous victory cookies? Me, Leah jumped up. But can you tell us about the Tokyo deal while we bake? Of course. Uriel, he rolled up his sleeves. I'm ready to learn. Everything. And for the first time in years, we felt like a real family. One built on truth, respect, and maybe just a few $1 billion worth of cookies. The morning sun streamed through my office windows as I reviewed quarterly reports. A knock at the door made me look up. Come in, I called, smiling as Leah poked her head in. Hey, Mom. Ready for the presentation? Today marked Leah's first internship presentation at my company. She'd insisted on starting at entry level, wanting to earn her place rather than rely on nepotism. Just finishing up here. I closed my laptop. How are you feeling? Nervous, but good nervous. She smoothed her blazer, the one we'd picked out together. Dad's already in the conference room. The fact that Uriel now attended company events as a supportive spouse rather than the assumed breadwinner still felt like a small victory. We walked to the conference room together, passing Maya, who gave Leah a thumbs up. Inside, Uriel sat among the board members, looking proud but appropriately reserved. Good morning, everyone. I took my place at the head of the table. Today we'll be hearing project presentations from our summer interns. First up, Leah. She stood confidently, connecting her laptop to the projector. No one in the room except family knew she was my daughter. She'd insisted on using a different last name for the internship. Thank you, Mrs. Davidson, she began professionally. My team has identified several opportunities in the emerging AR market. As she presented, I caught Uriel's eye. He smiled, nodding slightly. We both remembered the day everything changed, when I'd revealed my secret empire. But this moment, watching our daughter command a room of executives, felt even more powerful. In conclusion, Leah finished, the projected ROI for this initiative is 47% in the first year alone. The room erupted in applause. Clark, sitting near the back, shot me a knowing look. Excellent work, I said, keeping my voice professional. Any questions? An older board member raised his hand. Just one. When can we start implementation? Leah blinked in surprise. You want to implement my proposal? It's solid, I replied. Unless anyone objects? The board's unanimous approval made Leah's face light up, but she maintained her composure, just like I'd taught her. After the meeting, we gathered in my office, me, Uriel, and Leah. The professional facades fell away. You crushed it! Uriel hugged Leah. That was amazing! Thanks, Dad. She turned to me. Mom, what did you really think? Honestly? I perched on my desk. Better than my first presentation, and you did it without hiding who you are. Speaking of hiding, Uriel said, pulling out a small box, we have something for you. Inside was a nameplate for my desk. It read, Addison Davidson, CEO, Mother, Cookie Connoisseur. Because you shouldn't have to be just one thing, Leah explained. Tears threatened, but I held them back. It's perfect, my phone buzzed. Flynn's old company was officially being merged with ours today, the last piece of that chapter falling into place. Mrs. Davidson, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. The press is here for the merger announcement. Ready for another press conference? I asked my family. Actually, Leah said, I baked cookies for it. Victory cookies. Your recipe. I raised an eyebrow. When did you have time? This morning before my presentation. I've learned from the best about multitasking. We walked to the press room together. No more secrets between us. The cameras flashed as we entered, but they didn't bother me anymore. I took my place at the podium, my family proudly by my side. Today marks not just a merger of companies, I began, but a testament to what's possible when we stop underestimating people, including ourselves. Leah distributed the cookies to the surprised reporters while I continued the announcement. Some things hadn't changed. I still baked, still attended PTA meetings, still helped with homework. But now I did it all openly, proudly. After the press conference back in my office, Uriel asked, Do you ever regret waiting so long to tell us the truth? No, I replied, straightening my new nameplate. We all needed to grow into who we are now. You needed to learn humility. Leah needed to learn respect. And I needed to learn that being underestimated doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. In a good way, Leah added quickly. In the best way, I agreed. Now who's ready for lunch? I hear there's a great little cookie shop downtown. Mom, Leah groaned, then grinned. Actually, that sounds perfect. As we headed out, I caught my reflection in the office window. CEO, mother, wife, baker of victory cookies. Finally, perfectly, completely myself. And that was the sweetest victory of all.
The sound of dirt hitting my father's casket should have been the worst thing I heard today. It wasn't. That honor belongs to my husband's whispered ultimatum, delivered between clenched teeth while he gripped my elbow too tight. Either we move in with my parents, or I'm filing for divorce. I'm Willow, and this is how my marriage died on the same day we buried my father. The funeral crowd had thinned to just family now, if you could call Jake's parents that anymore. Martha stood across the grave, her vulture-like stare boring into me while Henry hovered at her shoulder like a shadow. They'd been circling closer all afternoon, probably rehearsing their practice speeches about family duty and doing what's best. You're hurting me, I said, trying to pull away from Jake's grip. He loosened his hold but didn't let go. This isn't a negotiation, Willow. Dad's retiring next month. They need us. My father's body isn't even cold. Exactly. You're emotional. You're not thinking clearly about what's best for everyone. I stared at the fresh dirt, fighting the urge to laugh. Or scream. Or both. What's best for everyone? Or what's best for your mother? Don't start with that again. Jake's voice carried that familiar warning tone, the one that usually made me back down. Mom and Dad have given us everything. The least we can do is help them transition into retirement. Samuel, my father's oldest friend, approached slowly from the cemetery path. His presence was like a lifeline, and Jake's grip finally fell away. Martha's eyes narrowed at the interruption. Willow, dear, Samuel said, his weathered face creased with genuine concern. Your father would have wanted you to take some time. Process things. We're family, Martha cut in, gliding forward. We'll help her process. Won't we, Jake? I watched my husband nod, the same way he always did when his mother spoke. 15 years of marriage, and I'd never seen him refuse her anything. The weight of my father's estate papers felt heavy in my purse, papers Jake didn't know about yet. Papers that would change everything. I need to go, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I have things to arrange at the house. Our house, Jake corrected. And it's too big for one person. Mom and Dad's place makes more sense. I said I need to go. Samuel touched my shoulder. I'll drive you. She's fine, Jake snapped. I'll take my wife home. Actually, I said, I'm not fine. And I'm not going anywhere with you right now. Martha gasped, perfectly timed for maximum dramatic effect. Jake, darling, you see how she's acting? This is exactly why she needs us. I turned away, Samuel falling into step beside me. Behind us, I could hear Martha's voice rising. Could practically see Jake's face reddening with that specific shade of embarrassment his mother always managed to produce. You can't just walk away from family, Martha called after me. But I could. I was. The truth hit me halfway to Samuel's car. I'd been walking away from myself for 15 years, one small step at a time. Letting Jake's family reshape me into their idea of a proper wife. Watching my own dreams fade like old photographs. Not anymore. Samuel opened the car door, and I slid inside, my hands shaking as I buckled the seatbelt. Through the windshield, I could see Jake and his parents huddled together, 3 heads bent in conversation. Planning their next move, no doubt. Let them plan. They didn't know about the recordings yet. Or the letters. Or the truth about what my father had discovered before he died. They had no idea what was coming. Samuel's car pulled up to my father's estate, my estate now, just as the sun was setting. The old Victorian shadow stretched across the lawn like a warning. Jake's Mercedes already sat in the driveway, a sleek reminder that I couldn't avoid what was coming. You don't have to go in alone, Samuel said, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. Actually, I do. I gathered my purse, feeling the weight of the estate papers inside. But thank you. For everything. The front door opened before I reached it. Jake stood there, jacket off, sleeves rolled up like he was ready for battle. Behind him, I could hear Martha's voice floating from the kitchen, probably already reorganizing my cabinets. Nice of you to finally join us, Jake said, stepping aside to let me pass. Mom's making dinner. In my kitchen. Our kitchen, Willow. And she's trying to help. I moved past him, the familiar scent of Martha's signature pot roast hitting me like a slap. She'd cooked the same meal for every major event in our married life, birthdays, anniversaries, the day Jake made partner at his firm. Now here it was again, on the day we buried my father. There you are. Martha's voice carried that artificial brightness she reserved for public performances. She stood at my counter, wearing an apron I'd never seen before, probably brought from her own house. Henry, look who finally made it home. My father-in-law barely glanced up from his phone, mumbling something that might have been a greeting. I'm not hungry, I said, heading for the stairs. Jake caught my arm. Mom went to all this trouble. Let her go, darling, Martha cut in, her knife clicking against the cutting board. She's grieving. Though I do wish she'd consider how her behavior affects others. I jerked away from Jake's grip, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Behind me, I heard Martha's stage whisper, "You see what I mean? This is exactly why she needs us here." My father's study door was ajar. I pushed it open, expecting the familiar comfort of his space. Instead, I froze. The room had been ransacked. Drawers hung open, papers scattered across the desk. The painting behind his chair, the one he'd always joked contained his secrets, hung crooked on the wall. My hands shook as I straightened it, revealing the wall safe behind. Still locked. Thank God. Looking for something specific? I spun around. Jake stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. What did you do? Me? He stepped inside, closing the door. I was looking for the will. Since you ran off with Samuel instead of discussing things like an adult. The will is with the lawyers. You know that. Do I? You've been awfully secretive lately. He moved closer, and I caught a whiff of scotch on his breath. Just like your father was, at the end. A chill ran through me. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Jake said, his voice dropping, that I know he changed his will 3 weeks ago. Right after our last dinner together. Right after Martha and I told him about our plans for developing this property. The pieces clicked into place. The tension at that dinner. My father's sudden insistence on updating his estate planning. The way Jake and Martha had been hovering ever since, watching Dad like hawks. You were planning this before he even died? Planning what? To take care of family? To make something of this oversized monument to your father's ego? Jake ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing. Your father was sick, Willow. He wasn't thinking clearly. Footsteps creaked on the stairs, followed by Martha's voice, everything all right up there? Fine, Mom, Jake called back, his eyes never leaving mine. Willow's just having a moment. I moved toward the door, but he blocked my path. We're not done here. Actually, I said, I think we are. On several levels. His laugh was ugly. You really want to do this? Fight me over a house and some land? Because I promise you, Willow, you won't win. I thought of the recordings in my purse. The letters. The truth about what Jake and his family had been planning all along. We'll see about that, I said, pushing past him into the hallway. Martha stood at the top of the stairs, concern painted perfectly across her face. Dinner's ready, dears. Why don't we all sit down and talk about this like family? Family. The word had never sounded more like a threat. The blueprint spread across Samuel's kitchen table might as well have been a death sentence for my father's estate. Architectural drawings showed modern buildings sprawling across the land, cutting through gardens my father had tended for 30 years. The date in the corner, 3 months ago, burned into my vision. Jake had these drawn up before Dad even got sick, I said, my fingers tracing the sharp lines that would destroy everything my father built. Look at his signature here. And Martha's company logo. Samuel placed a steaming mug of coffee beside me. There's more. He slid a folder across the table. Inside, I found emails between Jake and various developers, all dated weeks before my father's death. The language was careful, coded, but the intent was clear. They'd been planning to transform the estate into a luxury family compound. Complete with separate wings for Jake's parents. They were just waiting for him to die. Not exactly, Samuel said, pulling out another document. They were waiting for him to sign this. The paper trembled in my hands as I read. A transfer of power of attorney, drafted but never signed. My father's signature line sat empty at the bottom, a small victory from beyond the grave. My phone buzzed, another message from Jake. I'd left the house last night after refusing to join their family dinner, and he'd been alternating between threats and pleading ever since. You should read this one, Samuel said, holding up a final email. It's from Martha to the developers, dated 2 weeks before your father's death. The words blurred through tears of rage. Once we secure power of attorney, we can proceed regardless of Willow's objections. Jake assures me she'll fall in line or face consequences. A key turned in Samuel's front door. I scrambled to gather the papers, but Samuel held up a hand. I invited someone. Henry stepped into the kitchen, looking smaller somehow without Martha hovering nearby. His eyes fell on the blueprints. So you found them, he said. Did you know? I demanded. The whole time, did you know what they were planning? He sank into a chair, suddenly every bit his 62 years. Martha said it was for the best. That we'd all be together, like a real family should be. By destroying my father's home? Your father. Henry's laugh was bitter. Do you know what Martha called him? The obstacle. Every night, planning and plotting, while I sat there watching my wife and son turn into people I didn't recognize. My phone buzzed again. Jake's message flashed across the screen, Mom's lawyers are ready. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. They're meeting with contractors today, Henry said, pulling out his own phone. Martha thinks she's won already. She's picking out paint colors for her wing of the house. I stood up so fast my chair toppled backward. They can't. The property isn't even. They don't care, Henry cut in. They never have. It's always been about control. Martha's control. And Jake. He shook his head. Jake never learned to say no to her. Samuel touched my arm. Show him. I pulled out my father's last letter from my purse, the one I'd found in the safe after Jake's failed search. Henry read it slowly, his face growing paler with each line. Your father knew, he whispered. All this time, he knew what they were planning. And he left me everything I need to stop them. I gathered the blueprints and emails. The question is, Henry, whose side are you really on? He stared at his hands for a long moment. When he looked up, something had shifted in his eyes. Martha's at the estate now, he said. She's meeting the contractors at noon. She thinks. He swallowed hard. She thinks she's finally winning. She's not, I said, checking my watch. Because in exactly 45 minutes, I'm going to show her what losing really looks like. Samuel picked up his car keys. I'll drive. Henry stood, straightening his shoulders. I'm coming too. It's time someone stood up to Martha. Even if it has to be me. My phone buzzed one final time. Jake's message was just one line, last chance, Willow. Don't do anything you'll regret. But as we headed for Samuel's car, regret was the last thing on my mind. They wanted a war over my father's legacy? Fine. I'd give them one they'd never forget. Martha's face turned ashen when we walked into the estate's garden. She stood among a cluster of contractors, architectural plans spread across a portable table. Her perfectly manicured finger frozen midpoint on the paper. Jake's expression shifted from confusion to rage as Henry stepped out from behind me. What is he doing here? Martha's voice could have frozen hell. Telling the truth, for once, Henry said. The contractors shifted uncomfortably as I approached the table. One of them, older, with kind eyes, glanced between the blueprints and my face. Mrs. Davidson, I wasn't aware this was a contested development. It's not contested, Jake cut in, moving to stand beside his mother. My wife is just emotional right now. Her father's passing. Her father's murder, you mean? Samuel's quiet words dropped like bombs in the garden. Martha's clipboard clattered to the ground. Jake went still. What did you say? His voice was dangerous, low. I pulled out my father's last letter, along with the medical reports we'd found hidden in his safe. Dad knew about the development plans. He also knew about the sleeping pills Martha had been slipping into his evening tea. Convenient timing, wasn't it? His sudden decline just when you needed him to sign over power of attorney? That's ridiculous, Martha snapped, but her hands were shaking. Henry, tell them how ridiculous this is. I found the pills in your purse, Martha. Henry's voice cracked. 3 days before he died. I told myself I was imagining things. That you wouldn't. That our son wouldn't. The contractors were already packing up, murmuring apologies and quick exits. The older one paused beside me, pressing his card into my hand. Call us when this is sorted, Mrs. Davidson. Legally sorted. Jake grabbed my arm as I tried to follow them. You're making a mistake. The mistake was thinking you ever loved me more than your mother's approval. I jerked away from him. The police are already reviewing the evidence. They're very interested in Martha's monthly prescriptions for sleeping medication. And the timing of your development plans. You wouldn't dare. Martha's perfect facade cracked. After everything we've done for you. Done for me? The laugh that escaped me didn't sound like my own. You mean like systematically isolating me from my friends? Criticizing every decision I made? Planning to destroy my father's legacy while he was still alive? We were trying to help, Jake insisted, but his eyes darted to the medical reports in my hand. Mom just wanted what was best for everyone. Best for everyone? Henry's voice rose. Our son is facing possible conspiracy charges because you couldn't wait a few more months for a legal inheritance? Because you had to control everything, everyone, all the time? Martha turned on him, teeth bared. Don't you dare turn on me now. Everything I did for this family. No. I held up my phone, recording app running. Everything you did for yourself. And now everyone's going to know exactly what kind of person you are. Jake lunged for the phone, but Samuel stepped between us. In the distance, sirens wailed. That'll be Detective Morris, Samuel said quietly. He's very interested in speaking with all of you. Martha's composure shattered completely. Jake, do something. But Jake just stood there, looking lost, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. For the first time, I saw him clearly, not as my husband or Martha's son, but as a hollow man who'd never had the courage to be himself. It's over, I said, watching police cars turn into the driveway. The estate stays as it is. And you all get to explain to the police exactly why my father died 3 days before your development plans were set to begin. You'll regret this, Martha hissed, but her eyes were wild with fear. I thought of my father's last days, of the confusion in his eyes that we'd all dismissed as natural decline. Of the tea Martha insisted on preparing herself. Of Jake's convenient business trips that kept him away from witnessing his mother's frequent visits. No, I said, watching Detective Morris approach with his officers. I don't think I will. The handcuffs clicked shut around Martha's wrists, and somewhere in the garden, a bird began to sing. Detective Morris's words echoed through the estate's empty living room. Martha made bail an hour ago. I gripped the armchair, knuckles white. Through the window, I could see Henry pacing the garden, phone pressed to his ear. He hadn't spoken to Martha since her arrest 3 days ago. What about Jake? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. Still in custody. Morris flipped through his notes. But his lawyer's good. Very good. They're already spinning a story about him being manipulated by his mother, claiming he had no knowledge of the sleeping pills. Samuel set a glass of water in front of me, but I couldn't bring myself to drink. He knew. He had to know. Proving it is another matter. Morris leaned forward. We need more than circumstantial evidence. Something concrete linking him directly to your father's death. My phone buzzed, another text from an unknown number. I'd been getting them since Martha's arrest, each one more threatening than the last. This one made my blood freeze. Check the greenhouse. Willow? Samuel touched my shoulder. What is it? I was already moving, Morris and Samuel following as I rushed across the lawn. The greenhouse had been my father's sanctuary, filled with rare orchids he'd spent decades cultivating. The door hung slightly ajar. Inside, devastation greeted us. Every plant had been methodically destroyed, orchid stems snapped, pots shattered. On my father's workbench lay a single teacup, identical to the ones Martha had used. Don't touch anything, Morris barked, pulling out his phone. But my eyes caught something else, a flash of white beneath the broken pottery. I pointed, and Morris carefully extracted a stack of papers. Bank statements. Emails. A second will, dated before the one we'd found in the safe. These are fake, Samuel said, examining them. They're trying to create a paper trail showing your father intended to sell the estate. Martha's handwriting, I said, recognizing the forged signatures. But the plan? This is all Jake. This is how he thinks. Henry appeared in the doorway, face ashen. Martha's gone. Her phone's disconnected, and she cleared out our accounts this morning. A crash from the house made us all jump. We rushed back, Morris drawing his weapon. The front door stood wide open. Inside, Jake stood in my father's study, hands raised as two officers trained their weapons on him. At his feet lay the open safe, empty. Looking for these? I held up the stack of evidence from the greenhouse. His eyes narrowed. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand perfectly. You and Martha thought you could forge documents showing Dad wanted to sell. Plant them in the greenhouse, make it look like he'd hidden them. Then discover them after destroying the real evidence. She's lying, Jake said to Morris. Everything in that safe proved Willow's been manipulating the situation. My mother was trying to protect our family's interests. By killing my father? By doing what needed to be done. Jake's composure cracked. You never appreciated what we were trying to build. A legacy. A real family. Not this mausoleum to your father's ego. Henry stepped forward. Where is she, Jake? Where did your mother go? Why? So you can betray her again? Jake's laugh was ugly. You're as weak as Willow's father was. At least Mom had the courage to take action. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, but this time with an image, Martha, sitting in what looked like an airport lounge, holding today's newspaper. The text below, last chance. Sign over the estate, or the real evidence about your father's death goes public. She's bluffing, Samuel said, reading over my shoulder. But Jake's smile told a different story. Are you sure about that? Mom kept very detailed records of her visits with your father. Every cup of tea, every conversation. Would you like the world to know how long he suffered before the end? How many times he begged for help while you were too busy to notice? The room spun. Morris was saying something about tracking Martha's phone, Henry was shouting at Jake, but all I could hear was my father's voice from his last days. Something's wrong, Willow. Something's not right. I'd dismissed it as confusion. We all had. Jake's smile widened as he watched me process this. Tick-tock, Willow. How much of Dad's legacy are you willing to destroy to protect your own? Martha's evidence arrived in a plain manila envelope, delivered to the estate by courier. Inside, I found photos, handwritten notes, and a USB drive that documented every step of my father's decline. The final photo showed him in his study, cup of tea in hand, dated the day before he died. The look in his eyes, confusion, fear, betrayal, made my knees buckle. "You can't trust these," Samuel said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They could be manipulated." Detective Morris examined the USB drive. The metadata's intact. These are original, unaltered files. Jake sat across the room, still in handcuffs but wearing that familiar smirk. Mom always was thorough. Especially when it came to protecting the family. Protecting the family? Henry's voice cracked. "She killed a man, Jake. Your wife's father. She eliminated an obstacle." Jake leaned forward. "Just like Willow's become an obstacle. But there's still time to fix this. Sign over the estate and everything goes away. The evidence, the investigation, all of it." Morris's phone buzzed. He stepped away to take the call, then returned looking grim. "Martha's been spotted boarding a private plane to a non-extradition country. We're trying to ground it, but..." "Too late," Jake said. "She's probably already in international airspace. Tick-tock, Willow. Once she releases those files to the media, your father's legacy becomes a scandal. Every newspaper, every TV station will run stories about the confused old man who died under suspicious circumstances while his daughter was too busy to notice." My hands shook as I lifted another photo from the envelope. Dad in his garden, looking lost among his beloved orchids. Martha's handwriting on the back, day 47, increased dosage. Subject showing signs of severe confusion. "Subject," I whispered. "She documented his murder like a science experiment." "She documented your negligence," Jake corrected. "The devoted mother-in-law who tried to warn you something was wrong. Who stepped in to care for him while you focused on your career. The grieving widow who noticed his decline but couldn't convince his daughter to pay attention." Samuel grabbed my arm as I lurched toward Jake. "He's baiting you." "The papers are ready," Jake continued. "One signature and this all disappears. Mom releases a statement about a misunderstanding, returns to help manage the estate development. Your father's reputation stays intact. Everyone wins. Everyone except Dad. He's dead, Willow. But you're not. Think about your future. About the scandal this will cause. About how people will look at you, wondering if you knew all along what was happening to him." Morris cleared his throat. "The planes cleared U.S. airspace. We've notified Interpol, but nothing will stick," Jake finished. "Not without creating a media circus that destroys everything your father built. Is that what you want? To turn his legacy into a true crime podcast?" I looked around the study, at the books Dad loved, the photos of us together, the garden visible through the window. Everything he'd built, everything he'd loved, tainted by Martha's methodical documentation of his murder. "Time's running out," Jake said softly. "Mom's given you 1 hour to decide. After that, the files go public. Every detail, every photo, every moment of his suffering. Is your revenge worth destroying his memory?" Henry stepped forward. "There has to be another way." "There isn't." Jake's smile was triumphant. "Mom made sure of that. She always does." My phone buzzed, another message from Martha. A video this time, showing Dad in his final days, confused and afraid, calling out for me while Martha's voice soothed him with promises to help. I'll need to see the papers, I said quietly. Willow, no, Samuel protested. But I was already reaching for the document Jake's lawyer had delivered. The estate transfer agreement that would give them everything they wanted. Everything they'd killed for. Smart girl, Jake said. I knew you'd make the right choice. I lifted the pen, feeling its weight like a coffin nail. In the garden, the last of Dad's orchids swayed in the breeze, survivors of Martha's destruction. Soon they'd be gone too, replaced by whatever monument to greed Jake and his mother planned to build. Just sign, Jake urged. End this nightmare. The pen hovered over the signature line as Martha's final text arrived, time's up. Choose wisely. The pen never touched the paper. Instead, I reached for my father's favorite teacup, the one still sitting on his desk, the one Martha had used for her final dose. What are you doing? Jake's smirk faltered. Something Dad taught me. I lifted the cup, examining its delicate pattern. About orchids. About patience. About hidden things. Samuel stepped closer, realization dawning on his face. I caught his eye, saw him reach slowly for his phone. Enough games, Jake snapped. Sign the papers, or Mom releases everything. You mean like this? I turned the cup over, revealing the tiny camera lens embedded in its base. Dad wasn't as confused as you thought. He knew something was wrong, so he started watching. Recording. The color drained from Jake's face. You're lying. The cameras were everywhere. In his teacups, his books, even the orchid pot Martha destroyed yesterday. I nodded to Morris, who was already typing on his phone. Every conversation, every cup of tea, every secret meeting about development plans. All streaming to a secure server. Impossible, Jake whispered, but his eyes darted to the cup, then to his handcuffs. Your mother was thorough, Jake. But Dad was thorough too. I placed the cup back on the desk. He knew you were planning something. He just didn't expect his own family to kill him for it. Martha's voice suddenly filled the room from Morris's phone, streaming the server's contents. Just drink your tea, Richard. Jake and I have everything under control. Jake lunged forward, despite his restraints. Turn it off. Can't do that, Morris said, nodding to his officers. This is evidence now. All of it. You don't understand, Jake's voice cracked. Mom will release everything. The photos, the videos. Let her. I stepped closer, close enough to see the fear replacing his arrogance. Let the world see what she documented. What you helped cover up. Every file she releases will match perfectly with Dad's recordings, except to show the whole truth. Samuel's phone buzzed. Martha's plane just turned around. Interpol's orders. That's impossible, Jake said. She has diplomatic immunity. Had, Henry cut in, holding up his own phone. I just spoke with our family lawyer. Seems Martha's immunity was tied to my position on the diplomatic corps. The position I resigned from 10 minutes ago. Jake slumped in his chair. Dad, you can't. Can't what? Stand by while your mother faces justice? Like I did when she killed Richard? Henry's voice shook. I've done enough standing by. My phone lit up with a message from Martha, the last one she'd ever send me. You'll regret this. I typed back 3 words, watch the tea. The officers led Jake away as Morris played more recordings. Martha's voice filled the room again, documenting her crimes in perfect detail, while Dad's hidden cameras captured every moment, every confession. Every calculated move. The orchids, Samuel said softly. He hid cameras in the orchids she destroyed yesterday. She thought she was destroying evidence, I replied. She was actually preserving it. Every broken pot released another memory card. Your father, Henry's voice cracked. He knew? He suspected. That's why he changed his will, why he left everything in trust. I picked up the estate transfer papers, tearing them slowly in half. He made sure Martha and Jake could never touch it, no matter what happened to him. Morris ended the playback. We'll need your testimony. You'll have it. Every detail. I looked around the study, at the home Martha had tried to steal, at the legacy she tried to destroy. Let her release her evidence. Let everyone see exactly what kind of person she is. Samuel touched my shoulder. Richard would be proud. No, I said, watching Jake's police escort disappear down the driveway. He'd be heartbroken. But he'd understand. In the garden, through the study window, I could see the surviving orchids swaying in the breeze. Dad's final witnesses, keeping their secrets safe until the moment of truth. Just like he taught me. The verdict came down like thunder in the quiet courtroom. Martha's face remained stone still as the judge read out her sentence, but her hands trembled, rattling her handcuffs. Jake wouldn't look at me, wouldn't look at anyone, his earlier bravado dissolved into something smaller, more fragile. Henry sat beside me, shoulders bowed but steady. He testified against them both, his quiet voice carrying more weight than Martha's theatrical protests or Jake's rehearsed excuses. Outside, reporters waited with their questions about justice and closure, about healing and moving forward. They didn't understand. Some wounds don't heal, they just become part of who you are. Back at the estate, I found Samuel in the greenhouse, carefully tending the surviving orchids. New growth had emerged from the broken stems, tiny green shoots reaching toward the light. Your father's last letter, he said, holding out a weathered envelope. He asked me to wait until after the trial. The paper felt warm, alive somehow. Inside, I found a single page covered in Dad's familiar scrawl. My dearest Willow. If you're reading this, then the worst has happened, and you've discovered the truth about Martha and Jake. I'm sorry for the burden I've placed on you, for the choice I made in documenting everything instead of confronting them directly. But I knew they'd never stop, never be satisfied until they'd taken everything. The cameras weren't just about gathering evidence. They were about teaching you one last lesson, that truth, like the orchids we loved, requires patience, careful tending, and the courage to wait for the right moment to bloom. I've left you more than just the estate. I've left you the strength I always saw in you, even when you couldn't see it yourself. The strength to stand alone, to face hard truths, to protect what matters most. In the greenhouse, behind the broken pottery and Martha's destruction, you'll find something I've been working on. A new hybrid orchid, years in the development. I've named it Willow's Justice, because like you, it thrives not in spite of adversity, but because of it. Plant it. Watch it grow. Let it remind you that even in our darkest moments, beauty finds a way. All my love. Dad. Samuel touched my shoulder. There's something else you should see. He led me to the back of the greenhouse, where a single pot sat hidden behind the wreckage. Inside, a stunning orchid bloomed, petals white as truth, streaked with veins of deep purple like justice finally served. He finished it just before. Samuel's voice trailed off. The genetics are completely unique. It's officially registered with the Royal Horticultural Society. Your father's final legacy, and yours. My phone buzzed, a message from Detective Morris. Martha's private plane had been seized, her offshore accounts frozen. Jake's law firm had stripped his name from their partnership. Their carefully constructed world was crumbling, one piece at a time. I switched off the phone. "Help me clean up this mess?" I asked Samuel, gesturing to the broken pots and scattered soil. He smiled, understanding what I wasn't saying. Sometimes healing starts with simple things: dirt under your fingernails, broken things made whole, new life emerging from decay. We worked in comfortable silence, clearing debris and salvaging what we could. Henry joined us later, his diplomatic polish replaced by workman's gloves and determination. Together, we rebuilt what Martha had tried to destroy, making space for something new to grow. As the sun set, I placed Willow's Justice in the center of the greenhouse. Its petals caught the fading light, transforming it into something almost otherworldly, beautiful and resilient, like truth finally set free. Dad was right. Some things require patience, careful tending, the courage to wait. And some things, like justice and orchids and healing, bloom in their own time, in their own way. I touched a perfect white petal, feeling its strength beneath the delicate surface. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more reporters, more pieces to pick up. But tonight, in this greenhouse my father loved, surrounded by broken things growing whole again, I finally understood what he'd known all along. The most powerful legacy isn't in what we leave behind, but in what we help others become strong enough to grow for themselves.